Ed, are we ready to go?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read the announcement, and we'll go forward from there.
Okay, sounds good. I'll let you start then.
Okay. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 and March 23rd order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Town of Southampton Select Board is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to view this meeting while in progress may do so by go to zoom.us/join, hit join a meeting in the top right of your screen, type in the meeting ID of 885-5973-1357, and then use the password of 145425, then hit join. Please be sure to mute your device when joining in. Note, to join in the video meeting with a cell phone, you'll need to download the Zoom app from the App Store, or by watching public access TV, Charter, Spectrum, Channel 191. In-person attendance and public comment at Select Board meetings will be suspended until further notice. If you email a written public comment before the scheduled Select Board meeting, it will be read at that Select Board meeting. If you email a written public comment after viewing something at a live televised Select Board meeting, it will be read at the next Select Board meeting. Please send your public comments via email to selectmen@townofsouthampton.org. Please note that all public comments must be within the requirements of the policy on public comments listed in the open time for the public on the Select Board agenda. There we go.
All right, thanks very much. Welcome everybody to the Select Board meeting. Today's Tuesday, June 23rd, and we'll begin with the national anthem, Pledge of Allegiance. And actually, I have a flag too. So if everybody join me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all.
For all.
I just want to start the Select Board meeting by just saying a couple of things. One is that Southampton is a beautiful town of 6,100 people, but according to the statistics that Francine just grabbed for the Open Space and Recreation Plan, it is 97.7% white community. So in spite of the lack of diversity, I just want to assert that I and certainly the rest of the Select Board certainly acknowledges the struggles that are going on historically and currently, and that we support peaceful expression of outrage in terms of the maltreatment of African Americans in particular, but anyone in general. And with that, I would like to allow Chris Fowles to say a personal statement that she would like to say.
Thank you, Rini. As we meet for this evening for the Select Board, I feel that I must mention that the Black Lives March and Rally began just about an hour ago at Town Hall, and I had the chance to witness the very beginning of the event and hear some of the speakers from town. As most people know, racial injustice is happening daily around the country, perhaps not so visibly in Southampton, but it does exist here. And saying Black Lives Matter does not mean that others don't matter. It means that now, particularly now, people of color need our attention and our help to correct unfair housing, banking, medical, judicial, and education practices that have intentionally marginalized our fellow citizens. There is racism built into our society, and many of us deny we have any racial bias because we don't recognize how pervasive it is. COVID has brought several of these injustices to light. So this is a time in history when we all have the opportunity and maybe even the obligation to listen to each other, to learn things we didn't know and were never taught in school about Black history, culture, and contributions to society. This March rally allows Southampton to show its support for and solidarity with African Americans who are still struggling for equality and justice in this imperfect world. While we see these inequities in many institutions, it is important that we also recognize the professionalism of our town's police department and the standards set by Chief Illingsworth. But thank you in general to the organizers who thought of including Southampton in this rally and march. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chris. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to make one other announcement. I was very impressed by an email I got that was passed along about a project that's happening in Southampton, and I know the deadline is tomorrow night at midnight, but Tor Bashista is a Southampton resident. He's conducting a project for the environmental, I'm not sure if it's a he, but conducting a project for the environmental health class, and what he's encouraging people to do is pick up litter around the streets of Southampton, take a picture of it, and based on the type of trash that's pictured, some type of public health project will be created. So I imagine if, he finds a lot of alcohol bottles that might be targeting towards liquor stores in terms of education around littering. Where I used to live, there was a lot of trash, and sometimes it was fast food store bags of trash. So I imagine based on what kind of trash is found, there'll be a project that, educational project that is geared towards it. So I think it's a great project. All submissions are due, though, tomorrow, June 24th at midnight. And the email, in case you're interested in doing this and taking a picture, picking up trash, you can also pick up trash without taking a picture, and doesn't have to have a deadline. But anyway, the email for submissions is V as in Victor, B as in Bob, 2868@mcla.edu. I think it's a very worthwhile project, and I'm grateful for they're putting this out. Does anybody else have any other announcements or anything they'd like to say before we start with the agenda?
Yeah, really, just one thing, and I didn't bring the paper in here, so I'm forgetting the exact reason, but every year farmers get recognized for special things that they do during the year and special improvements, and Fletcher Farm got recognized again this year. I forget the exact item for it. Like I said, I don't have the paper, but if I remember correctly, they also got recognized last year, so it's great to see the local farms get recognized.
Right, great. Thank you very much for mentioning that. I remembered last year I hadn't seen anything for this year. Anybody else have anything they want to mention?
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate what you said last week about the Congregational Church distributing masks to people who need them on Saturdays. I think it's a wonderful project, and I know that individuals in town make those masks and, gives them to the church for distribution. I think that's a wonderful thing, in addition to the food pantry that they operate the second and fourth Saturday of each month. So they're doing a lot to help the community.
They absolutely are. Thanks for mentioning that. If there's no other announcements or anything, then we'll go ahead right with appointments and resignations. Would someone like to read through the appointments and resignations?
I can read through if you want, Rini.
Sure.
Okay. Marla Hank, Conservation Commission, reappointment, term to expire 6/30/23. Nilda Cohen, Zoning Board of Appeals, reappointment, term to expire 6/30/23. Geraldine Swanson, Zoning Board of Appeals, reappointment, term to expire 6/30/23. Shanna Reed, alternate member, Zoning Board of Appeals, reappointment, term to expire 6/30/23. Margaret Larson, Capital Improvement Committee, reappointment, term to expire 6/30/23. Jonathan Flagg, alternate Building Commissioner, reappointment, term to expire 6/30/21. Randall Kemp, alternate Agricultural Committee member, reappointment, term to expire 6/30/23. Barbara Szymborski, Finance Committee appointment, term to expire at the 2020 annual town election, September 1, 2020. Ken R. Cole Sr., Finance Committee appointment, term to expire at the 2020 annual town election, September 1, 2020. And it says Emergency Management Director, term to expire 6/30/21, but there's no name associated with them. So I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, we talked about that last time. I think there was a comment about not being reappointed unless there was a sanction attached. I think that's what you had told us last time, Ed. Is there any update on that, or should we consider this appointment without, can you explain that?
It's in there as a placeholder. As you are aware, the current Emergency Management Director, Charlie Konecki, said he wouldn't take it unless the stipend that he had talked about earlier in the year came along with it, and that whether it's for Mr. Kanicki or in regards to someone else, the information for the job description has been sent off to the PPPB board for a rating.
Okay, then it sounds like we should hold off on that one, but address the other ones above.
Yes.
Would someone like to make a motion to appoint or reappoint the above people?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we reappoint or appoint all the people that I read off except for the EMD position.
And I'll second that.
Okay, discussion?
I just want to say I appreciate people stepping up to the plate, especially for the Finance Committee, in the short term, and then hopefully they'll love their experience that they'll run for office at the election in September.
Yeah, I kind of challenge everybody to reach out. I mean, we have a town meeting that's going to be, involve a lot of planning and so forth. And so to be able to have a finance committee for this particular cycle would be extremely important. It's part of our bylaws. I did reach out to two people. One person is considering, they have some potential conflict of interest they have to address. The other person declined. So I would really encourage other people. Ed, could you just tell us, providing the two people, and I wanted to see if Barbara wanted to say a couple of things because I can see that you're on the call. Is there, how many people does that give us in the Finance Committee, and how many additional seats are needed?
That would give us 3 individuals on the Finance Committee, and there would still be 2 vacant seats.
Okay, so if people can continue to reach out to folks, that would be very helpful. The hope would be that we would have a Finance Committee to review the budget going into the next town meeting.
Now, Rini, remember Ed said he was going to reach out to John Labrie to see if he was still on it or his resignation was effective already. Is he the third one you're talking about, Ed?
I think Ed's frozen somehow.
Yeah.
Oh, he's back.
Yeah.
It is freezing up now and again. Did you hear that, Ed?
No.
You were going to reach out to John Labrie to see if his resignation was effective now or before or coming up at the end of the term.
And yes, I did reach out to him, and John said that, no, it was effective when he had sent it in.
So he's not the third person. Okay.
Well, there are 3 people.
Tom Livingston is the the current member of that Finance Committee.
Okay, well, hopefully the person I reached out to will step up. He's supposed to get back to me shortly, so please continue to step up. Now, Barbara, Barbara Szymborski, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you for putting your hat in the ring for the Finance Committee. We got your resume. It's obviously extremely impressive, and certainly you have a great background for doing this. So thank you for that. Did you want to say anything?
No, I just think the town is great and I'd like to contribute.
Great. Well, thank you for doing that.
Really.
Yep. Anybody other comments?
No, just add my thanks to that, Barbara.
You're welcome.
All those in favor of the above appointments and reappointments, roll call vote.
Tishman, aye.
Fowles eye.
Roland, aye.
Martin, aye.
Roden, aye. Thanks again, Barbara, and everybody on the list for stepping back up on the committees. So regarding the Emergency Management Director position, you said it went to PQB and it's in the process of being reviewed and scored. Will that position be publicized?
If that's what the Select Board would like to do, yes, it will.
Okay. And otherwise, a decision, once that gets scored and comes back to us, then we would make a decision around whether we're choosing to have a stipend or choosing to have any compensation for the position or not, and then open it up to people who'd be interested. Is that the process?
That would be the process, yes.
Okay.
Rini, didn't we talk about Ed going to John Workman and asking if he wanted to take on that task?
Yeah, I think what happened was, I think when there was discussion around the stipend or not, and whether or not the CARES Act required putting the money out first and then getting reimbursement. And so whether or not the stipend to qualify for that, I guess the backup plan would be that our fire chief, part of his job description is involves emergency management. So I know you've had some back and forth with John about that. What'd you find out, Ed?
I would say that if that came a part of the fire chief's job duties, that would be part of the bargaining for his contract extension or a new contract.
Okay. Okay, then we're.
Rainey, I guess my question is, as of this time next week, we won't have an EMD. Do we have a kind of a backup for that? Because everything's still going on, as you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that right now, I think our backup is the fire chief.
Okay.
That'll either be the fire chief or myself.
Yeah.
We had a former emergency manager, I believe his name. I don't know if I don't want to mention his name. He might be someone that might be interested in coming back just on an interim basis until we get this resolved.
Francine, if it's the one right before Charlie, he resigned because he had the issue of there was no compensation there. Again, I don't want to say his name, but
Right. Well,
there was that issue there.
Well, maybe just volunteer on a short-term basis until we get it resolved. Maybe he would consider it without compensation.
Okay. I think we're going to go through the process with PQB like they encourage us to do initially, and we will wait to see what their recommendation is and have it be scored, and we'll take it from there. I don't think there's a problem in mentioning that it was Don Snyder. He had the position before. It wasn't just a compensation issue. It was also a communication issue. He would find out after the fact about events that happened in town, whether it would be fires, that sort of thing. So I think he's now retired, and I think it's worth reaching out to him, at least in an interim basis. If not, I think that between Ed and John Workman and Ian, I think by default, and the Board of Health, we're having weekly meetings. I think that we will continue to keep the ball rolling in the absence of a choice right now, but I think it's worth asking Don Snyder. I'm happy to reach out to him, or I can ask Ed to do that. Does anybody have a preference?
Happy to have you reach out to him.
Yeah. If you know him, I think that would work.
Okay. Okay. I'd appreciate a motion, just because I want to make sure that I have the endorsement of the select board to take care of business.
I move to have you reach out to Don Snyder to see if he's interested in being an intern.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Tishman, aye.
Fowles eye.
Roland, aye.
Martin, aye.
And Groden, aye. Okay, I will do that. Okay, so.
Who seconded that motion, please?
John.
I did.
Okay, so there are no presentations, so now we're up to reports. If somebody would like to begin the select board reports.
I'll jump in, Rainey. Not too much on the normal meetings. We've had routine meetings both with Concom and Board of Assessors over the last week or so. Probably the biggest meeting, and the one that's been really moving along very quickly, is the Master Plan Implementation Committee. We have finalized, by tomorrow morning, we will have the very final version of the survey after doing some wordsmithing amongst ourselves. So we are looking to put out what we're calling the Community Engagement Survey, hopefully launching it on Friday. And this will be electronic. It'll be available online. We'll put up a link on the town website. So I'll get with Ed to make a little announcement for the town website. We'll be doing some PR out on the marquees for the Mothers Club and Lions Club. We'll have something on social media. And basically, we've got a 2-month period for people to take the survey, again, both electronically and in hard copy. And we're working on a Dropbox. Ted Palmer is constructing a Dropbox for us for the town hall. So we will have an outside box where people could pick up hard copies, blank hard copies, as well as return completed copies if they don't want to do it online. So there'll be more information coming in the various newsletters around town, but we're very excited about it. The committee's worked extremely hard along with our consultant from PVPC, and we're looking forward to getting it out in front of the community and seeing what people's reaction is and what their opinions and input and priorities might be to help us kind of move forward with an action plan to really implement the master plan over the next 5 or so years.
Great, thanks. Any questions for Chris? Any other committees, Chris? Any other reports? No?
Nope, that's it.
Anybody else?
I have nothing. I'm on the master plan, master plan implementation, and that's it. No other activity since the last meeting.
Nora's school meets tomorrow, so I'll have an update for next meeting from that. Capital Committee, we are working to schedule a meeting, but we're just waiting for we're waiting for Ed to hear back from the CARES Act with regard to some items that we've applied for. Reason for us to be getting the band back together is to try to solve for the Hampshire Regional HVAC, to try to solve for that as a town. So, and to try to have that come out of committee and to kind of relook at everything that we looked at previously and to see how we want to handle this. But first step is to see if some CARES Act items come through, because some of the items that are on our capital list, we applied through the CARES Act. And so if we get lucky there, that'll take some of the pressure off. Certainly. So, Ed, my only request there is that when you find out from the CARES Act, if you wouldn't mind just, you have the email chain in your inbox, if you just wouldn't mind replying all to the Capital Committee, so that we just have an understanding of as soon as that comes in, because we do want to schedule our meeting quickly so that we don't delay town meeting and town election and ballot stuff and everything else.
All right, and I'll let the select board know also when that comes back.
Great. And PQB, like you said, is meeting. We haven't met in a while formally, but we're meeting on June 25th, so Thursday.
Okay.
To review a number of things that we need to catch up on.
Okay. Anything, John?
Other than the building commissioner, which we'll touch on later, I have no other updates.
Council on Aging hasn't met since the last time, but they did have a very nice parade by Lori Loisel's house, who I mentioned last time was elected to be the volunteer of the year, which I think was very nice. I wasn't able to go, but I heard it was really nice. And Open Space Review Committee is meeting Thursday night, and I just got a notification that the Board of Health is meeting on Thursday evening also. Town Administrator report?
Don't have much. Most of it's actually on the agenda, but would like to let the select board know that we did receive a notification from the Reminder Publications that they are going to start weekly newspaper services here in Southampton, along with the towns of covering Southampton, Easthampton, and Westhampton. So that's expected to start in July. So we'll see if we get some additional local news out of that newspaper. It would definitely be nice. And as you talked about earlier, the Black Lives Matter sponsored march did start here at 5 o'clock this afternoon, and they had some talking and some singing. The group sounded good out front. They were well behaved, and they probably stayed here till just around 6 o'clock when they started down Route 10 towards Conan Park. The plan was for them to stay on the sidewalk, go down to Conan Park. Once they got to Conan Park, they would be actually coming back on Route 10 on the sidewalk and heading to East Street and taking the right on East Street and finishing their march at the police department. Oh, and then a couple of other things just to let you know is, as usual, as we get to the end of the fiscal year and most of the town hall building expense account had already been depleted, and we had already transferred money in. Last week, we actually had to have the sprinkler company come out and look at the sprinkler system because we were getting some frequent low sprinkler air pressure warning lights on. So they were out and they serviced that. We also had 2 air conditioning units that serve portions of the town hall go down. One served a portion of the upstairs, and that went down and was serviced on Wednesday and came back up, or no, that was Tuesday, I'm sorry. And then on Thursday, we had an issue with one of the units that serves a portion of the downstairs at the town hall. So the HVAC contractor had to come back in on Friday and fix that unit. Both units, it turned out, were low on Freon.
How old are those?
Should be from the renovation in 2011.
They still should be good. That's what, you know. I mean, if they lost, do we know, like, so they're leaking, right?
Yeah, it's just a question if it's a very, slow leak that disappears, over a few years, or, is it something that, dissipates in a month? I know I've been here about 2.5 years now. One of the ones that we had an issue with, that one in my time here, I don't recall having to have Freon added to it. The other one, I'm not positive, but it actually may have needed some Freon probably in the first year I was here.
Is that
These are on
covered
the
in?
roof.
What's
Sorry, go
that?
ahead, Matt.
These are on the roof, right?
The compressors are on the roof. The actual air handlers are in the attic of the building. And in this particular case, it actually turned out to be the compressors. So yeah, those are on the roof.
You started off by saying that the depletion of the town hall building expenses. So I'm assuming that these charges were not covered under a service contract of some kind?
No, what we have for a service contract actually covers the yearly maintenance, which they come in quarterly. They change the air filters. They look at the belts. They'll replace the belts if they're needed. They'll clean the
Exchange.
Yeah, the exchange part of it, and they will, also clean the cooling fins off.
Let's keep an eye on this. Is this something that the green communities could help with?
If we were to look at, not necessarily repairs if it's leaking or whatever, but if it became apparent that there was new technology, in the compressor end of things, or we are definitely due to replace our controls, which isn't really this particular issue, but those type of, like the replacement of the controls to make it more efficient, it would be covered in the Green Communities grant. I don't know if there are newer compressors that might have enough energy savings that make us eligible on that end for the Green Communities. But actually, in addition to lighting, which we all see, probably heating and ventilation units, depending on how old they are and how efficient they are probably some of the primary areas or issues where you can garner energy savings.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Now, Ed, speaking of that, we have a fairly new generator from, I think, last year. And are there, just given summer and demand and things like that, are there regular tests that are done on that in terms of checking before it's an emergency and needed? Is that something that happens on a regular basis, or is there some kind of a schedule for that?
Well, the unit actually runs every Tuesday for about half an hour. It's programmed into it. So we know it does run, and it keeps it in good shape. And then David has been checking on the unit itself as far as the oil levels and what have you on a monthly basis.
Okay, great.
And at some point, yeah, it'll be worth our while to look into getting a yearly service contract on that.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any questions for Ed on the town administrative report?
No.
Okay, then we'll go into old business, starting with the shared building commissioner. Now, we have a couple of agenda items, a couple of them are new. So, John, you want to start us on that discussion?
Well, I had talked to, I reported this at the last meeting, I talked to Easthampton and Westhampton about all of us going in together, and Easthampton was very interested, but their time frame was so far out that it wouldn't accommodate us waiting. So then I had made a suggestion that we bring in the two candidates that were there already that had submitted against our job posting to interview. And that was, I guess, a week before last. I was on vacation last week. I spoke to Phil Dowling at the Westhampton. He's on the select board of Westhampton. He's the chair. I spoke with him today, and he said that they have already hired somebody and that they are no longer interested in joining us because it took longer than they wanted to wait for that. So now we're on our own looking for somebody for 32 hours.
Okay, and I think that once you had mentioned about the Easthampton not really going in on that, I think the question came up about proceeding now, and I think what I had said was that then let's get going with it, and I didn't think that we needed to do it during a select board meeting of interviewing candidates. That my recommendation was that we have a screening committee and that the select board identify, I mean, John, you've been very involved in this, maybe Art Lawrence, who's a full-time volunteer in the department, would go ahead and start the interview process. So I wasn't necessarily, saying that I was going to wait until tonight or later, but I mean, if people agree, the next step then is to bring those two candidates in and start the interview process. Do people want it to happen during a select board meeting? My thought was that, we can delegate that happen and then make a recommendation to us.
Yeah, I think we should start right away, as you suggest, call the candidates in, and I'm in favor of having a screening committee make a recommendation.
If we can, I'm available the rest of the week, so if we can get right on it and do it Thursday or Friday, I think the sooner the better.
I think I haven't seen a second resume. I've seen a resume of one individual, but not the second one candidate, I don't think. So if we could send those out again.
Okay, I mean, if people are comfortable with the idea of John and Ed and Art interviewing the two candidates, is that all are there just two, Ed, as of now? Is there anybody else that's come in?
Not that has come in. I know I had it posted on the MMA website a few weeks back also. I know there's been some people that have reached out to our previous building commissioner asking questions about it, but I have not received anything in additional resumes. So right now, just the two. And I would also probably recommend, since they should have a close working relationship, that John Workman be included in that interview group.
Okay, that's fine with me. Should we make a motion then to, to recommend a screening committee, make an appointment to the select board for this position as soon as possible?
So move.
Mm-hmm.
Second.
Okay, so Francine and then John Martin. Any further discussion?
Yeah, well, when we were saying as soon as possible, I know we all have different definitions of as soon as possible, but from my point of view, because we only have 2, and who knows if they're still available, and it's only 32 hours. If we can do something this week, to me, if we can contact them both tomorrow and say, are you available Thursday or Friday? I think we should do that instead of waiting until next week.
We'll still have to put some questions together before.
I know it, but it's better to get a schedule and we put the questions before the meeting. So if you schedule it for Friday, we have 2 days to put questions together, I think, and
Yeah. I just went through this process and I basically asked each of the screening committee to put forth 2 questions and then put it into one document and then ask the same questions to the both applicants. Now, is it worth, John, reaching out to the Westhampton person?
Now, I talked to them at length today, and what they ended up doing is, you're going to love this, ended up doing is hiring Tom Quinlan as the commissioner to oversee 2 building inspectors who are going to work part-time, and Tom is basically on the periphery being the commissioner when needed. So they worked that out. I believe the 2 inspectors or contractors known to the town, and they're also qualified to be building inspectors. So They've got technically 3 people filling that 1 day a week position in the office, plus going out to the different sites.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion about putting Chief John Workman, Ed, John Martin, and a nomination of Art Lawrence together to screen the 2 applicants and any others that come hopefully this week to interview? Any further question or discussion?
Let me add one more comment. Phil did say, well, maybe 6 months from now, depending on how we're doing, we may be interested in talking to you again, but I don't know that we want to hang our hat on that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Easthampton also said 6 months from now, they'll be ready to talk because that'll give them enough time. So who knows?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have to move forward.
I don't know if you need an odd number on the screening panel, but if you do, I could volunteer.
Okay. Thank you. All those in favor?
Tishman, aye.
Fowles, aye.
Roland, aye.
Martin, aye.
Roden, aye. All right, thanks so much, and thanks for all your help, John, with all of that process. Hopefully we can really move quickly now and get somebody on board.
Okay, so, Randy, before we get off the subject, technically, do we need a vote of who's on the committee? Or is that something we can form on our own? I just want to make sure we do everything by the record here. So I would almost think a recommendation by the board of putting certain people on the committee would make sense.
I think the motion that I had put forward that Francine had said so moved was to include, so I'll formalize it by saying Ed Gibson, John Martin, Art Lawrence if he's willing, John Workman if he's willing, and Christine Fowles.
Okay, so that's cool.
So, well, if everyone's in favor of that, then thank you for your help, everyone. Next is the East Street Bridge. Is there any update?
Nothing new. The National Heritage was out probably about a week and a half ago on a Friday. VHB hasn't seen their written comments as of yet. So Conservation, it has the public hearing for the notice of intent for the design on hold till they get the written comments from National Heritage and any updates to the plans from VHB, which VHB may hold off until they have the written comments from National Heritage. And my understanding is the 2 species that National Heritage has found and is concerned about out there are turtle and freshwater mussels.
Oh, interesting. At last meeting, you had said that you were going to investigate, or you had some thoughts about, obviously East Street Bridge is stage 1, and then stage 2 is East Street to Route 10, and lastly East Street to the Holyoke, Easthampton line in the other direction. And you were going to sort of look into a couple of things. Can we remember to put that on the agenda for one of the upcoming July meetings? just to discuss that a little bit more, we had talked about that there's, we're on the list for funding for the Greenway and also for East Street. And you had said that you were considering or were thinking about some other possibilities. Could we add that just to have it an update by then?
Yes, and just to clarify, with the East Street, the board had okayed at the last minute for us to put together a request for qualifications to go out for engineering services to actually design the East Street roadway in those two phases. And then on the Greenway, I had heard that there may be a possibility of receiving some money through a state agency that may either help us or actually purchase the right-of-way for the Greenway. And I have reached out to, or left a message to the person that would be able to send me in the right direction and tell me if what I heard is true or not, and I have not heard back from that person yet.
Okay, well, thank you. Yep.
Okay, that's the question on East Street. On the Southampton community page, there's an awful lot of questions going back and forth about what's happening with the East Street Bridge, which I think is great, but obviously it's the wrong forum. Is there a way we can put that on our agenda as a hard topic and publicize we're going to be talking about East Street, all the different phases and the bridge? Then we can publicize it out there and say, come on to this meeting, folks, tune in. We'll give you a whole update on what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Maybe put an announcement on the town website as well.
And maybe even on the side. It seems to generate an awful lot of interest, which I think is important.
Yeah, and I don't know whether or not it'd be helpful to have Randall on the call or anybody else that could, you know, I know we had the man from VHB there talking, but anyway, I think that's a great idea, because I think that everyone is aware that this is a major corridor and it is in dire need of being repaired. So let's plan that for an upcoming meeting, perhaps one of the July meetings.
Rini, Rini, can I ask could we use the, it's Lucy, sorry, it's Lucy.
I don't have video for you. Are you on video? I just don't see it.
You can see her, really.
I am.
I can't. So thank you for confirming that. Go ahead, Lucy.
I was just gonna ask, could we use the reminder publication to put something in about the East Street phases?
Yeah, the new one that's coming up. I don't know if that would be a good opportunity, I think. Yeah, the new one that's...
I'm probably going to take it, you know, not take advantage, but I'm probably going to use that for election information. So.
Okay, that's a good suggestion.
Or something on Robert Floyd's newsletter about the bridge. I don't know, something to get, you know, because some people do not follow the Southampton community page or the Easthampton. So it would be good if we can get it somehow where people can see it publicized in writing.
Sounds good.
Just a suggestion.
Okay, let's talk about the revenue expenditures. Everybody got a copy of the updated? We're coming down to the end of the year, and it actually, I thought, looked very good. What questions do people have on the, first of all, revenue?
Well, there's still a month to go on the revenue, and we're very close, so I'm assuming the gap will be filled, especially on the you know, the tax side of things.
Yeah, correct. It was 97.3%
Right.
collected through
Right.
Yeah.
the end of
Yeah.
May.
Yep. So we'll be there.
I was actually impressed with how much had been collected for taxes given the situation. So that's
Right.
great.
Yeah. And in this since our last meeting, since the last report we got.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any questions on either report?
I just have one question about, as you may have heard, Celebrate Southampton is going to be canceled this year. We've made that decision, but there was a placeholder, a little bit of money in there somewhere, $300 for Celebrate Southampton, and we had, as the committee, had already incurred some costs on that, and so I was wondering if it was still okay to put in receipts for that to get that money spent down before the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, as long as there's an account there, and just get them in before the end of the fiscal year.
I see it on the expense pages, but I don't see it on the revenue side. But it's got a number by it, so I assume it's there, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay, got a line item number, so, okay, I'll tell Tammy to put that in. Or Tammy, are you on the phone?
I'm here. This
Okay.
is Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway. Ed, they were dropped off today in the mailbox outside, and I had sent Vicki a email that I was going to drop them off. And it has a warrant filled out with it and everything.
Great.
And I believe we also have a check to return to you when you had, since the whole thing was on hold and you were applying for the
Beer
one. Yeah, exactly.
Beer and wine request, yeah.
So you'll get that back.
Thank you.
And Rainey, if I could just make a comment on the expense report.
Yep.
During this whole COVID crisis that we've had, obviously the police and the fire have had to ramp up a lot on the services they provided, but they're still in most cases well under our budget. So I think a big thanks needs to go out for them for performing above and beyond, as well as keeping it within the budget. So I think they've both done a great job.
Well, I will let you know that some of the wages for the police were charged to the account that was set up for COVID-19 wages.
Okay.
Wasn't an overly large amount. I think it was somewhere around $8,800 the last time I had looked.
But if we remember past years, we've always had big overages in those areas. And I think the last couple of years they've really taken it to heart and held to the budget that they're allocated.
Any other comments about the revenue and expense report? I'm assuming we'll end up getting a series of transfers in the upcoming 2 months.
Well, yeah, there'll be transfers probably in the next few weeks. My memory is I think they have to be, I'll have to go back and look. I think they have to be approved by July 13th or 14th for transfers, any transfers that are needed.
Well, we only have one more meeting before then, Ed.
Yeah, we might, as in, we may have to set up a special meeting closer to that date if anything pops up. We have in the past. Sometimes we need another meeting. A few things will pop up at the end, and sometimes we don't need it.
Yeah, I have a question on local school transportation. There's a balance of 180,000 that I'm assuming is there simply because we haven't been doing any transporting of students. My understanding is we're going to still have to pay the bus companies. Do we know what that is going to look like?
No, we don't. That was one of the strong suggestions from the state that the school districts continue paying the bus companies on the theory that they didn't, that a lot of these drivers that, came up to do the jobs may go back to wherever they actually live and may not be available to start up again in the fall. But I know the central office is in negotiation with the bus company because, obviously, there are some costs that are included in that contract that really wouldn't have been utilized, i.e., diesel cost or whatever for fueling the buses. So I know that they're negotiating that.
So there'll be some savings, but certainly not what we see on the books right now.
Probably not.
Okay. All right.
But there should be some.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on the revenue and expenses? Then let's go on to the next agenda item, which is the short-term, long-term disability and the bid. We approved that last time, Ed. Is that already ready to go out?
John and I worked on it again. It's back in your packets. We updated the dates on it for actually going out and being available. So that's why it's back in your packet here. If those suggested changes and the dates and the minimum of the language on the short-term and the long-term disability meet with the select board's approval, and I think we're good to go.
Okay, so that basically it's the RFPs are due on August 4th at 2 p.m. And then there'll be presentations by vendors in August 2020. And then notification of the contract award approximately also in August. Were there any other content changes to the bid? Their request for proposals?
We had that one question in there on under section 1.5 proposal requirements, where it had said in each option above, the STD plan should include payment of 75% of the employee's scheduled gross weekly payroll amount for a period not to exceed, and it said 13 weeks, but I think it was Francine that asked about that because of current.
Right, it was a discrepancy.
For 26 weeks, and then the LTD plan should include payment of 65% of the employee's scheduled gross standard weekly payroll amount not to exceed. And at that time, it just had XXX weeks. So it's been filled in as that one is 13 weeks also.
Okay. Do you need another vote to approve the bid or request for proposal?
It always helps.
Okay. Can someone make a motion then to approve the request for proposal for short-term and long-term disability insurance? For town
I'll make the motion, we approve it and send it out as soon as possible.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Chris seconded it. Any further comments or questions?
Just one quick question. What is the current plan we have now? When does that expire, and will there be a gap, or is this going to overlap?
The current plan is at 26 weeks where we pay people when they're out up to 26 weeks as a personnel policy.
No, I know that. I thought we had a separate insurance plan with a company of some sort. No?
No.
Yeah, self-insurance. That's
Okay.
whether that's a we're doing this because it's too much of a hit to any department to have to try to accommodate a disability like that.
Right. Okay.
So-
Got it.
The amount of money you were going to have a more level, predictable amount of money. Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Fishman, aye.
Fowles eye.
Roland,
Martin, aye.
Road 9. Yeah, we can get that out as soon as possible, so that by early August we're going to be able to review proposals. And that's the kind of thing that's going to take a little bit of comparing apples to apples. I mean, there's a lot of variety in what we're requesting be presented, so I just think that the sooner we get it out, the better. Next agenda item is open space and recreation plan update. Ed, would you like to talk about that?
Sure. There's another meeting of the update committee tomorrow evening to go over the different sections. Ken Comia from Pioneer Valley Planning Committee has provided us with drafts of sections 1 through 7 to review at that meeting and make any comments or changes to it. They're also still reviewing the data that is in section 5 to define anything that still needs to be updated in that, and also if the committee wants to include anything in that section for data referencing future years.
Any other comments about the open space plan? There's a meeting tomorrow night, and PVPC is helping a lot with writing the sections. And do we have, I think we have a timetable we talked about at the last meeting, Ed. So hopefully we can report a little bit more detail about that. I'm happy to help with that next time.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Next item then is Route 10 water main replacement. Any updates on that?
No, they're currently in the process. I'm putting together a contract for the water department for the bidding and construction portion of the project with CEI. And then we'll send that out, get it signed, and they should be ready to go to bid.
Okay, and who's driving that process in terms of getting it going?
Water department.
Okay. Next, any questions about the pipe that's being put underneath the bridge from the water? Okay, next is the farmland for sale. We, I think, finalized the bid on this also last time. Is that all set to go out also?
Yeah, it's here in your package with all the final changes to it. Christine asked me if I could make a couple of minor grammatical changes to it, which I have, but it is what you see is ready to now go out and be distributed.
Okay. Are the dates that we talked about still applicable?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's, let's say, I'll just go over them.
32, July 1, I think we talked about.
What's that?
Did we talk about July 1?
No, they'll be publicly open and read aloud at the select board meeting on July 21st.
Okay.
Let's see, when they have the timeline for questions should be in here. And they have the deadline for submitting questions concerning the bid process or specifications to get it to me by July 14th.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, so we should probably, as we did with the other bid, have a motion to approve this final copy and get it out also as soon as possible. Would someone like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion, we post it and advertise the bid as soon as possible.
And I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Was that Francine that seconded it?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Tishman, aye.
Fowles eye.
Roll and die.
Martin, aye.
And Groden, aye. Thank you. We're really moving through all these bids and projects. I'm glad to hear that things are moving along. Next on the agenda, just gotta scroll back to it. Easthampton Media. I had asked to put this in the agenda just to find out what's happening with anything with the PEG equipment. I think the last we heard that it was okay for us to not have to go, to purchase it through the town, and therefore a little bit more complicated process. And so can Ed, or I see Jen's on the, I can't always tell if someone has video, but can we get an update on that?
Yeah, Jen and I have been playing a little phone tag, but I'm sure she can give us an update.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Jen Ramsey, Easthampton Media. So we had signed a contract recently and kind of clarified the roles of our organization in the town of Southampton. And I got back in touch with the vendor that we were working with last year to revisit the quote for equipment, taking into consideration that you had asked for the microphones to be movable as well as asking about the possibility to do remote participation in combination with an in-person meeting. So I'm going back and forth with additional questions to the vendor. I suspect having a hybrid type meeting like that with remote participation or call-in participation is going to cost some more money. So he's working on some solutions for us. I wanted to ask while I'm here, do I need to submit an article to the annual town meeting for this?
Yes, that was part of my
Sorry, Greenie and Matt got kicked out. We got a message saying there was another meeting going on. I texted them and they're going to rejoin with the same link, I believe.
Right.
That's what I had to do.
Yeah, we all got the same pop-up.
Yeah.
I thought it was something I did.
No.
We'll blame it on you if you want, Jen.
Is it going to come back on TV?
Yeah, so television is still broadcasting. It would just probably go black for a second.
No.
Yeah, it might have something to do with being a shared Zoom account. So if somebody else logged in, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what mine said. My computer said that somebody else tried to start a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, and does somebody else have a meeting tonight at 7 o'clock that you shared the link with?
shouldn't be.
Going to come back on?
Yeah, it's not broadcasting yet.
Yeah, it's not on TV, Jen.
Oh,
It's
okay. Let me see. I'm in touch with Tim, who's running it. Let me see what happened. I suspect that he got booted as well.
This concludes our broadcast day.
There we go. There's an old message.
I was going to say, yeah, when was the last time you heard that? You're too young, Matt.
No, I know.
Well, at least he's too young to remember that geographic screen that came out at like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
when the station signed off.
Yeah, it's a big rounds. Yeah, he watches reruns. That's how he knows.
I do.
Is everybody back?
Yep.
I
think so.
Okie dokie. Let's see, where were we? We were talking about
Jen
Easthampton.
was updating us on the PEG equipment.
Yeah, so I suspect what happened just now is somebody else tried to log into the same Zoom account. This is running off of the town's Zoom account. I don't know what happened. But anyways, Easthampton Media looks like Tim just joined. He's our operations manager running the broadcast. So I believe we'll be live on TV in just a second. So anyway, I have this equipment kind of proposal that I put together last year. And we're trying to add a couple new features to it. I'm going back and forth with the vendor. Last thing I said before we got booted was, do I need to submit an article to the town meeting?
And you don't need to submit the full article, but if you can, we at least know what the equipment is we're getting, the dollar amount.
Okay.
We can work around that to write the article.
Okay, and I know that's due in 1 week. That's reasonable. I believe I can get you something for 1 week from now.
Okay, great.
How much do you think it'll be extra because of the remote participation? Do you know, Jen, about?
I don't have any cost yet. We're still looking at solutions, but without remote participation, if it was just the in-person live broadcast equipment, it's somewhere around $40,000, which we have in the special PEG capital fund. We have about $69,000, so we'll still have some extra. And the other thing is that in 2 years from now, Charter is going to give another capital grant for equipment of $50,000. So I think spending $40,000 now and then having a little extra to keep us for other projects until we get another capital grant from Charter, I think we're going to be okay.
Great.
Is it $60,000 for Easthampton Media or $60,000 for just Southampton?
So it's like $68,600, and it's Charter pays the town, but it's for PEG access equipment and facilities upgrades and related purchases. So it doesn't directly go to Easthampton Media, but is supposed to be used for your public access equipment upgrades.
Okay.
Right, and one of the other things that might get utilized for is to make that the library at Norris School more user-friendly for their meetings.
Yep, that's my next project. As soon as this one is, as soon as we get a green light on this one, I'll be working on that one.
Thanks a lot, Jen. Any other questions on that? If not, we can move over to new business. And the first two items were about the building commissioner. Is there anything new that needs to be said about that? I think we have a plan for an
Yeah, I
interview.
think we covered it all.
Good. Hopefully we can get those interviews this week. Next is COVID update.
Yes, and we're into phase 2, part 2, which started on Monday, and so restaurants are required with certain are okay with certain restrictions if they want to start doing indoor dining. Tables have to be 6 feet apart, no more than 6 people at a table, and they can utilize that along with any outdoor seating that they may have already set up, and use both instances. Currently, it is still not allowed if you have a restaurant with a bar in it. No one can sit at the bar. That portion is. I'd like to know who's messing with this account.
Yeah, there's no one scheduled.
No.
Hey, Ed, is there a chance that Art is testing this right now?
I would not have mentioned names. It's possible that anyone could be that has the account information could be coming in, testing.
I'm only saying that because we haven't had a PQB meeting on Zoom, and I know we've got one scheduled on Thursday, and all of that kind of came out today, so that there's a chance that Art's testing that.
Yeah, but I had actually asked him, and he said he has hosted Zoom meetings because I offered to reach out and give him any help that he needed. So he sounded like he was familiar with it. So I kind of doubt that it happens to be Art, but I could be wrong.
We're still not broadcasting. It's blank on the TV.
Oh, it's trying. Wow. Yeah, that happened before.
So if we're not broadcasting, does that mean we're not recording?
So this is Jen again. My camera's off, but Tim is working on, basically he had to reconnect to the meeting just like we all did. He's going to let me know in 2 seconds when it's broadcasting. It's still recording, and we will be able to edit out these little blips if we need to.
Yeah, and it would still be recording in the cloud too from the Zoom end of things.
Yep. Yep. I see the logo, so it looks like Tim's logged back in. So yeah, I would recommend if this is a shared account, just making sure that other people know not to log in or to log out as soon as they're done.
Ed, you're probably the one that has the list of who actually is able to run these Zoom meetings. It might be important to send an email out to those people and ask them not to log into the account during
somebody else's meeting. Yeah.
Yeah.
COVID now.
We are broadcasting on TV again.
Okay.
You
were talking about COVID and stage 2.5.
Yes, thank you. Let's see. In addition to the restaurants being able to start with indoor seating again, personal service facilities such as eyebrow threading, nails, massage are allowed to open back up with very certain restrictions on how they operate. Let's see. You know, some summer camps have opened up that, let's see, that the office space capacity has jumped up from 25% to 50% with this stage 2 of phase 2, shall we say. Locally, things are going well here at Town Hall with having the staff back. We did have supplies come in of, face masks, hand sanitizer, and gloves, which have been delivered to the staff. I also have received the quote from a local company to install the Plexiglass in the town clerk's office, the treasurer collector's office, the assessor's office, the building commissioner's office, and in the COA office, and also in the COA outside in the main hall on the countertop that separates the kitchen from the hall portion where people would sit. And so it's my intention to move forward with ordering that and having that installed. But overall, things are going well in the police and fire departments. At this point, they have adequate supply for now and into the near future. Everyone is healthy in those departments. Charlie Konecki's been says he's enjoyed about the last week and a half because things have definitely slowed down as far as having to chase for supplies, for PPE, what have you. So at least here in Southampton and in Massachusetts, everything seems to be working. People seem to be respecting each other's space, keeping the 6-foot social distancing, wearing the masks when they can't keep that social distancing, and following the governor's rules and regulations. So things seem to be moving forward, at least for the time being, fairly well.
Mm-hmm. Any questions?
Just one. I'm assuming that it won't be until after we get all the plexiglass installed that we'd even think about opening up town hall to the public, right?
That's correct. And I would say we're probably at this point a minimum of a month away from doing that, and might even be September before we think about opening back up to the public itself. Like to see what goes on with the data and the numbers. If we continue in the path we've been on with the numbers being down, or if we are going to start seeing any resurgence here in Massachusetts, which would make the governor think about taking a step back, through to a previous stage. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I know some other states which have probably, opened up sooner than Massachusetts has, and probably with not as many restrictions, are now seeing their numbers climb and are probably headed into another wave. So.
Yeah. So the numbers too are very deceiving. If you saw the article in the paper, and also reported, we continue to have the COVID meetings on Monday morning at 10 o'clock with police, fire, EMD, Board of Health, myself, and Ed. And for example, it's a cumulative list of numbers of people in the town. So Southampton went from 29 to 30. That does not mean there are 30 active cases of COVID in town. So it's a little bit deceiving because they don't, when someone's already gotten through the disease or whatever, it doesn't fall off the numbers. So it's not always entirely helpful. But as each stage, like with the park opening up, you know, we have discussion around how that applies to Southampton. With the nail salon, of course, Salon Advantages, you know, provides nail service. So we just check in as these openings happening and find out, you know, what, if anything, is put into place to ensure that they're safely following the guidelines. And everything, I mean, it's really, everything's going really well. Any other questions about COVID? The thing is, it's going to just be important for everybody to continue to follow the guidelines and not to sort of let up as the openings happen.
And that's going to be the challenge, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And is it okay if I step back one piece? Because I just thought of something. Sure. Hey, Matt, I definitely know it's not art testing the system because I actually had to go out and secure our second Zoom meeting account today because there was going to be a conflict Thursday night. And so we're starting to get to see, this is the second time I see boards and committees trying to meet at the same time or the same date. So secured that second account, and actually the information Art has for that is on the second account. So it definitely was not on this. So it's definitely not Art.
Good.
That's good. Okay, then let's talk about the town meeting update and date. The town meeting is scheduled for August 15th with a backup date of the 22nd. And there's a committee that's been put together to plan that, since it really needs to be planned for everyone's safety. And Ed, what kind of update do you have? And I'd also like to know whether a member of the select board would like to be on that committee.
Just to let you know that after a few conflicts of trying to get together, that the committee will be getting together tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. at one of the potential sites to take a look at it and go over things there, and then talk about the planning and other possibilities for sites or locations, both within or outside of the town of Southampton. So that'll be nice for us to finally get together and do that. And then I did get, you know, one select board member reached out to me that was interested in being a part of that committee. So, and they said that they were available tomorrow morning to make that meeting.
Well, you want to tell us who it is?
I was hoping that they'd volunteer. It was John Martin.
You have to guess, Rainey.
Thank you. Okay, so the meeting is tomorrow at Norris School, and there'll be multiple steps to take to make sure that everybody's safe, and you'll give us an update as time goes along. And thank you, Tammy. I know you're also helping out. Anybody else like to say anything about the town meeting? And the date for the warrants is still June 30th, right?
What's that?
The date for the approval of the articles for the warrant?
Is, yes, June, now I gotta look at a calendar.
You had said the 30th originally.
Okay, I was trying to figure out if it was either the 30th or 31st. It's the 30th.
Yep. 30 days has September, April, June, and November. The other thing is, most towns that are doing outdoor meetings like this, and certainly during COVID, have pared down dramatically the articles for the warrant. And I imagine at some point that will be a discussion we'll have once the submissions are finalized, right? Correct.
And, you know, taking other than the budget, what is absolutely, you know, essential and has to have happen, and you know, what is another way to look at that is also, you know, what could be put off that might be, you know, if anything, that might be controversial and could be dealt with, you know, later in the fall or early winter at a special town meeting.
Robert, I see you on video now. Would you like to say anything?
Yeah, a little bit. Thank you. Robert Floyd, 166 College Highway. The Select Board has 2 Tuesdays basically to go over the articles on the warrant, July 7, which is 1 week after the deadline for submission, and July 21. I would ask you keep a schedule for those 2 meetings and make that a priority to go over the articles, so we don't use that as a reason to delay the town meeting from August 15th to the 22nd.
Okay, thanks for that.
Cheers.
Anything else, Robert?
No, I'm looking forward to the meeting tomorrow, and once we have a site that we agree on, then we can proceed with procedures and get all the departments involved.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and I think ideally like to keep it, probably to 2 hours or under, so that, especially if we have any heat like we have recently, that people aren't subject to sunstroke or heat stroke.
Are you asking 2 hours for the annual or 2 hours for tomorrow?
Probably both.
But yeah, in both cases.
Both cases. If I have anything to do with it, this may be the fastest annual town meeting in town history in August.
There we go.
Maureen, this is Tammy Walunas,
Right.
298 College Highway. I do know that Virginia Ahart with the CPC has reached out to me and a few others that have articles on there, knowing that we've already been put off almost a year trying to get foundations and roofs fixed, or meeting grants and things like that. So I know that's something that she will hopefully be talking to you guys about also.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. There's nothing else on the town meeting. We can talk about the town election. I think that's next on the agenda. It's we decided it was going to be September 1st, which is the same date as the primary. Any other updates on that?
I've been in contact with KP Law, and they said it is possible, and they are actually going to pursue it through special legislation because they know of another town that was looking to do the same thing and have their annual election on September 1st. So there's at least another town that wants to do the same thing, and the state representative for that town had already started a process of special legislation. So we're hopeful that that will occur that way rather than through a court order. As far as the September 1st date goes, we don't need permission from the state election department to have it the same day as the state primary. So like I say, I'll keep the board posted as we find out more as this works its way through the special legislation to have it on September 1st.
Okay. Ed, did you want to say anything about the registrar situation?
I do know that one of the members, actually the member that had been appointed to the 2-year term, that was a nominee of the Republican Party, had reached back out to Lucy because he was actually the second choice of 3 and of the Republican Town Committee's choice, and he was wondering why the incumbent registrar that represented the Republican Party had not been chosen. So I will reach out to the individual that was inquiring of Lucy, explain to him the rationalization and see where we go from there.
Okay, so you'll let us know if something different has to happen?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you did send out letters to the people who were appointed to notify them and So hopefully there'll be a meeting of some kind set up, because I anticipate a larger number of absentee ballots.
Yes, I do too. And I think with the elections that are coming up, that a lot of people will take, whether you call them absentee ballots or vote by mail or what have you. I think there's going to be a lot of people that utilize that form.
Okay. Any questions about the town election?
Just remind everyone when the, I guess all the nomination papers have been submitted for anyone who's running.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Ed, is there any update on that in terms of I think that the legislation allowed for 10 signatures. Do we have the dates on the window? The previous people that submitted nomination papers, are they still,
anybody that submitted them, yes, they would still count. The only question is probably the special legislation, I think, allows for submittal of nomination papers, and I'd have to double check the date for sure, but I think it's like up to 38 days before the actual election date of September. So it might extend that a little bit further.
So sometime like the third week of July for anybody else who's still interested, is that right?
That would sound about right, yes.
Okay.
Okay, Open Space Committee discussion, permanent committee, and committee charge. So the Open Space Committee was formed as an ad hoc committee back around the time of the interest in 111 Glendale, and has really had a lot of momentum and a lot of activity, and is submitting to be a permanent committee. And so we got some paperwork, and there's two drafts. So Ed, you want to speak to the original draft and then your proposal?
And there's actually 3 drafts now, because Cindy went in and worked off of mine and made some tweaks to that. So there's should be 3 in your packages, and I'll go through all of them. The original draft, which the committee had put together and Cindy had written out, Open Space Committee charge, January 2020 draft. Membership: there shall be an Open Space Committee consisting of at least 7 members appointed by the Select Board, all of whom shall be registered voters of the town of Southampton, representing town boards and committees and the community at large. Section 2, terms. The term shall be 3 years for each member and shall be so arranged that as equal a number of terms as possible shall expire each year and shall begin on the first business day in July. If a vacancy occurs, the Select Board shall appoint a new member who shall serve for the balance of the term of the member replaced. Section 3, mission. The committee shall ensure protection of the town's farmlands, woodlands, wetlands, scenic views, and other open spaces vital in sustaining the town's historic, agricultural, and rural character, and in maintaining the quality of air, water, and wildlife habitat for the health and well-being of all residents. The following strategies will be pursued to achieve the mission. A, advise the Select Board on open space issues. B, align all actions with the town's master plan and the open space and recreation plan. C, collaborate with all town boards and committees to achieve the mission. D, acquire funding through federal, state, local, and private sources to achieve the mission. E, catalog priority lands for conservation and open space acquisition. Develop long-term regular contact with significant landowners. Section 4, meetings and proceedings. The committee shall meet at least quarterly. Minutes shall be kept of all meetings. Section 5, quorum requirements. The committee shall not meet or conduct business without the presence of a quorum. The committee shall approve its actions by a majority vote of those members present and voting. Section 6, election of officers. The committee shall annually, at its first meeting of each fiscal year, elect a chairperson, vice chairperson, and clerk for the ensuing year. Annually, the committee shall provide the select board with the names of the officers for the upcoming year. That was the original. Then I worked off of that because I know it's difficult to get people to serve on boards and committees. Anyway, this would be an addition of another committee. And since actually some of the research I did way back when on open space committees, actually a decent amount of them were also responsible for the open space and recreation plan update when it came out. So I kind of crafted a few general ideas into what's version 2, draft 2. And it says there will be open space committee consisting of 7 members appointed by the select board. And I changed it and said, all of whom shall be residents of the town of Southampton representing the community at large. The first one had said they had to be voters. And that's one of the pieces that can go either way, but it's another option. The terms are the same. Under mission section 3, actually is the same, and A through E is the same. And then I added this piece to it. When it is time to update the town's open space and recreation plan, usually every 7 years, this committee will be responsible to update that report. A, when the open space and recreation plan is updated, the committee's size will increase to 15 members to include representatives appointed by the Planning Board 1, Conservation Commission 1, Park Commission 1, Council on Aging 1, Mooney Preservation Committee 1, Select Board 1, Agricultural Commission 1, and Water Commission 1. B, the appointees from these boards and committees will be for a period of 1 year or to the completion of the open space and recreation plan update, whichever period is shorter. C, for the period of time that the town's open space and recreation plan is being updated, the quorum requirement for a meeting shall be 8 members. And then, let's say, meetings and proceedings were the same. Quorum requirements were the same, and section 6, election of officers, was the same as the original. Then in version 3, which Cindy worked off of from mine, it's the same through section 3 mission. A through E is the same. She added F, assume the responsibility for the town's open space and recreation plan update in a timely manner to avoid any period of expiration for that strategy. I, the committee size will increase to 15 and will include representatives appointed by the Planning Board 1, Conservation Commission 1, Park Commission 1, Council on Aging 1, Community Preservation Committee 1, Select Board 1, Agricultural Commission 1, and Water Commission 1. That's the same. Appointees from these boards and committees will be for a period of 1 year or to the completion of the open space and recreation plan update, whichever period is shorter is the same. And then she added, let's see, the quorum requirements the same under there. Meetings and procedures are the same. So essentially, the addition in version 3 is that letter F, which is assume the responsibility for the town's open space and recreation plan update. And it changes what I had in my version. Takes out the usually every 7 years and replaces that in a timely manner to avoid any period of expiration for that strategy.
Okay, I have a question. This hasn't gone in front of the Open Space Committee. There's a meeting on Thursday night. The addition of having this be combined with surge in the committee, or whatever you want to call it, every 7 years to accommodate the open space plan. And also, is the charge of the Conservation Commission to also, or to facilitate or somehow coordinate the open space plan?
You mean the open space and recreation plan? Basically, what I did when I added that clause in those committees is I went back to the original recommendation from Pioneer Valley Planning Committee of what boards and committees, in addition to residents at large, would be a plus to have represented on that, and that's what I went by.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not that the Conservation Committee or any of these has, any statutorial responsibilities or anything else, but the fact that when we were doing it, the template was there for them to be included is what I utilized.
Yeah, I think actually when I was liaison to conservation, I think I read about the statute, and it says may delegate and often does delegate to an open space committee. It's not uncommon for towns to have an open space committee.
Okay.
So what questions does anybody have?
When I was reading through it, one thing that just caught my eye, and I'm not saying either way, but on number 1, the original one on section 1 membership, it varies in 2 ways from the second and third. One is registered versus resident, registered voters versus resident. And the other is, in the first version, it says representing town boards and committees in the community at large. So I guess my question is, would it make sense to have X amount of the membership, permanent members from, Concom, planning, agricultural, so that input is built into the committee? Or would it be okay with just 7 members from the community at large? It's more a question of, which way I would go, but I'm just thinking that if you had certain committees that had to have a member on open space committee, they would lend it some kind of background. Like Concom obviously would be good, planning, agriculture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think those are good suggestions, John. I agree with you.
Yeah. Just knowing that what's going into this plan, I think that's also a very good suggestion.
Well, the question becomes, and I've seen it going through putting this plan together, with the fact that it is hard to get people on boards and committees. So many of these boards and committees aren't fully staffed or appointed anyway. Do you want to put the requirement on that some of those boards and committees be representative all the time? Or do you just want to have them represented at least because it's a less burden on them to be on another committee when that open space and recreation date is due?
That's a tough question. I understand the dilemma we're in asking people to spend more time, but by the same token, having people who are involved in a lot of the issues that will come into the, as a permanent member, representative of their committee on the open space committee and recreation plan. I can see the value in that. I really could, but I understand the other issue, the other dilemma for people.
I thought that was the original charge. Looking back, John and I were both on the committee. If you remember, John, there was a representative from Park, there was a representative from Assessors, a representative from Planning.
Concom was there, yeah.
So that was the original charge, and
Preservation.
yeah.
And just to, I'm going to be using names, but it's in a positive way. Cindy Palmer and Mooney, they're on that committee, and they just bring so much information that they gather from other sources and other committees versus a committee just with 7 community members that are kind of an oasis in the middle, So I think sharing of that information has been critical and just worked out well.
Yeah, I think so too.
And the other alternative here, if you don't mind, is scratch representing the community at large. Then it can be, of those 7 members, it can be a mix of people from the community at large, or if you wanted to have somebody appointed that also serves on the Concom or planning or what have you.
Can I make a recommendation that we, I think it must be on the agenda. I mean, I know that this has been pending for a while. Would it make sense to bring this back to the Open Space Review Committee for a recommendation? Then we're meeting Thursday night. Or are you, everybody prepared to just pick committees that people should represent for this and vote tonight?
No, I think it's a great idea doing that because I don't think we should force something on that committee. Let's get a recommendation from that committee. And as you know, we've got such a groundswell of support for that committee and people coming out to the meetings. I think that would be a great thing to do.
Yeah, I'd be very, I'd be opposed to cutting off community members. I think since the committee began, there were people representing various committees, but there's always been a couple of like free members that aren't attached and they're invested. You know, one of them has been the major grant writer for the committee.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that unaffiliated with any committee also brings some value. It just gives you a whole different perspective. I would like to see the combination of both.
I agree.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, you know, whether you have the 7 members and maybe you say that at least 3 or 4 have to be from standing, you know, representing standing committees, maybe something like that. So you've got the knowledge and that link back to the committees that are relevant to open space.
And the other thing on here, Rini, it says consisting of at least 7. So there, maybe you need 9 or 11, whatever the committee decides, because that community input, I think, has been so valuable. And like you said, Diana Fetterman has been the grant writer, and she's been a tremendous asset.
Well, that was one of the pieces I changed in version 2.
Right.
I never recommend a charge where you're saying at least 7 or up to a number or whatever. Pick a definitive number.
Yeah, but is 9 better, 11? I don't know the answer, but I guess, Rini, if you bring something back, that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, when I do that, then we'll talk about it on Thursday night and we'll bring it back for a recommendation from the committee in terms of whether it's specific numbers or at least, or what committees, if we want to be specific to what committees. I mean, assessors, having someone from assessors has been incredibly helpful. I can't imagine not having somebody there. So we'll bring it back. Any other suggestions?
Yeah, and interesting that, you know, that's not one of the required members on the plan committee.
Yeah. So we'll talk about it and we'll bring it back till next time. Okay, now we're talking about the 1/12 budget. Can we just take those 2 together? Well, actually, no. I guess they are obviously separate, but 1/12 budget.
And do you have what I sent out to you this afternoon and put in the Dropbox?
Yeah.
There are 2 pieces to it, and basically the number we were working off of from the fiscal year 20 recap was $20,095,842.28. 1/12 of that is $1,674,653.52. So that's the target. If you follow the DLS guidelines, you don't want to approve a 1/12 budget that is less than that $1,674,653.52. Now, when it has to be entered into the DLS portal, it's basically 3 different categories. So when it gets entered there, it doesn't have to be in the summary phase, doesn't have to be in great detail. Municipal operations is 1, school expenditures is 2, and then enterprise funds is the 3rd. So In the municipal operations, I went off the subtotals of what we utilize for the budget itself. And what I came up with, because look at what we theoretically would expend in July, and we are allowed to include like assessments, contractual increases to a retirement we pay up front, which is like $880,000 on its own. You can include the new amount for that. You can include wage increases that have already been approved for fiscal year 21, but you can't include either, as far as union agreements go that have been approved, you cannot include either COLAs in general, or if you were in the process of negotiating a union agreement, you can't guesstimate what that might be and include that in here. You can include your contractual increases to items like your general insurance, which you would pay up front, or some of your contract items like software support and what have you. So at least on the summary sheet that goes into the 3 categories that are allowed, that it has to be filed with DLS. I used the subcategories that were in our budget worksheet anyway, and they were general government, and I came up with $75,031.68. Public safety, $157,732.57. Public works, $148,056.68. Health and Human Services, $11,579.87. Culture and Recreation, $13,797.01. Employee benefits, the big one, $1,076,347.79. The subtotal in that category is $1,482,545.60. School expenditures is a separate category, and we won't get an assessment from either vocational tuition or for Hampshire Regional until at least September, so we should be back on our regular budget by then. So looking at historically what was expended last year in the month of July, $290,000. And then the enterprise funds, Vicki helped me estimate what those July expenditures would be. Water was $130,000, transfer station was $10,000. The subtotal of that category is $140,000. So the total comes to $1,912,545.60, which is about $230,000 over what an actual 1/12 budget from fiscal year 20 was. But that is due to the increases, the contractual increases to like retirement, insurances, and what have you, that we have to pay up front in July for this year. And then conversely, actually, when we do the same thing for the month of August, which we will have to do, a lot of those upfront costs will be gone, and then that actual figure will be actually much closer, or probably equal to at least the actual 1/12 of the fiscal year 20. And then if you wanted to look at how we got to those subtotals in those categories, that's what that sheet that's probably about 7 pages long has on it. And it works off actually it actually worked off what shows is the Board of Selectmen recommended fiscal year 20 budget, but also included in any contractual increases that were allowed over what, again, retirement this year, the increase in just the retirement was $68,000. The increase in employee benefits, if I remember correctly,
Ed, you're in the Excel sheet, right?
no, I'm in the PDF version. The Excel spreadsheet should be the one that's the actual preliminary budget worksheet for fiscal year 21.
So you're in the third on the email. You're in the third attachment.
Right now,
There should be two PDFs. One is just one page long, and that's the
Right.
summary sheet that flows into the three categories.
Right. And then,
For the DLS, and then the other PDF is about 7 pages long,
Right.
and it's the sheet that I worked off of with different accounts to get to those subtotals. So you could see that, for example, when you got down to retirement, that the entire amount of $880,357 is out and included in that.
so that's the way they want it done then, to any front-loaded expenses to include them because they occurred in July, but such as winter roads and winter wages and Hampshire regional expenses, which will also be very high, they're not included because they were not included in July,
Correct.
as opposed to averaging out over 12 months.
Correct. And that makes up to some extent for some of the items that you would have front load and pay entirely in July.
Okay.
And conversely, let's say you had a debt payment that was due in July. You would have to include that. If you don't have a debt or interest payment that isn't included till September, October, whatever, you wouldn't theoretically include it until you got to that actual month.
Mm-hmm. What kind of questions do people have about the 1/12 budget for July?
I guess I'd like it better than just taking a raw 1/12 because it really accommodates actual expenses. So I don't think it'll hurt the departments as much.
Yeah.
and what about the revenue side of this?
Well, currently we're working off what the revenues were for
20.
For 20, exactly. Now, should they, theoretically, should they be probably at least equal to that? Yes. Will they be less than what we might have originally anticipated for a fiscal 21 revenue piece? Probably, but that will have to address in the actual fiscal year 12 budget as we move forward and approve that for the town meeting for vote.
You were going to say something, I think, about John's comment about the distribution. You want to comment about that? It would be less of an impact on budgets, more typical. Were you going to say something about that, Ed?
Well, yeah, I was, and I think it was a good realization for DLS when they put this together and said, okay, we're going to let you put some thought into it. We recognize that there are certain costs that may occur in the month of July when you're starting up. There's certain costs that may, occur in the month of, August or September or what have you. And there are costs that, may not occur until, later in the fiscal year, and we're going to let you actually recognize in, what month those occur to help you do this. Otherwise, they recognize that, okay, for communities, retirement boards send out their assessment for the year and expect it to be paid in the month of July. So you have to recognize that, and if you were just working off a straight 1/12 budget, just that retirement payment alone would have accounted for 50% of what a straight 1/12 budget would have been.
Yeah.
And that is you move through the year, and ideally, doing this, you might have to, you might be doing 1 month or maybe 2 on the forecast level, and that's as far as you hopefully go, and you have a real budget approved for town meeting.
If someone's actually, is that background noise? Is somebody moving around a little bit? If someone could just be aware of that. Anybody else hearing that?
Yeah, I'm hearing it too. If you could mute your line if you're not talking, that would be good.
Any other questions about July budget? If not, could we have a motion then? Ed, was there anything about it else you want to say in terms of, it's pretty mathematical, but was there anything that concerned you, or anything you want to mention to us about it, or is it all pretty,
It was interesting to go through the process. You have and try to figure it out because, like I say, with the schools, Hampshire Regional doesn't assess us till like September. It's a quarterly basis. Vocational tuition is, somewhat the same. And then you've got other costs, like I say, are totally front-loaded for the month of July. And there are other costs, like I say, that you have to figure out when do they actually come up or occur? Are they fairly regularly, distributed over the 12 months, or, items like, winter road expenses or winter road wages. Hopefully with global warming, they, occur basically around late November, December, January, February, and March type of thing. So you got to include that in your planning process.
any other questions for Ed?
No.
All right, would someone like to make a motion then to approve the budget?
I'll make a motion we approve the budget.
For July 2020.
Right.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Tishman, aye.
Fowles, aye.
Roland, aye.
Martin, aye.
Roden, aye. Thanks, Ed, for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Vicky helped out with it, so it was interesting, to say the least, to go through that process. So you're welcome.
Okay.
And then, like I say, we will have to do the same thing again for the month of August. And we will need a certification from the Select Board Clerk, Francine, that the board did vote at this meeting to approve the 1/12 budget for the month of July.
Okay.
Okay, let's go on to the next agenda item now. Let me just bring it up. Does someone have it right in front of them? I'm going back and forth between a lot of documents.
TIF agreement, J&E tool.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I had actually asked that to be put on. The reason is because the voters of Southampton had approved a TIF agreement for J&E Precision that allowed for a significant tax reduction. So initially for FY 2020, it was an 80% exemption. And then there's a decreasing exemption that goes 2021, 60%, 2022, 40%, 2023, 20%, and then full taxation by FY 2024. And there are certain obligations of the TIF agreement, and one of them is to notify us 6 months in advance if the business sold. The business did sell. We were notified. And so now in July of 2020, there is supposed to be a report to the select board. It says Janie shall upon, let's see. Part of the agreement was that there would be a certain percentage of people that were hired that were actually members of Southampton. And let me just read what it says. Actually, I have the whole thing right in front of me, but it says that by July 2020, as a result of construction in Southampton, J&E shall create 15 to 20 permanent full-time jobs upon opening the new addition. J&E shall agree to operate a business and maintain the level of jobs described as long as the tax increment financing agreement is in effect. If J&E decides to sell the facility of the business or transfer control of the facility of business, they will give the town at least 6 months' notice of said sale. J&E shall provide the town with an annual report in the month of July for the period ending June 30th, 2020, and for each subsequent year of this agreement, said report shall contain the following information: employment levels at the facility at the beginning and end of the year, total economic target area residents employed at the facility at the beginning and end, financial contribution to the town, including property taxes, motor vehicle excise tax, water, sewer, etc., a description of any new private investment made for the benefit of the community during the year. So I'm just wondering, Ed, if you're able to reach out to them and request a report by the end of July. And I just wanted to ask Select Board, how would you like to proceed in terms of getting this information?
Hey, Rini, does it say anything in there that if there's a sale that this agreement is null and void, or does it continue with the new owners?
Well, the way the language says is if J&E decides to sell the facility of the business or to otherwise transfer control of the facility of business, it shall give the town 6 months' notice of said sale or transfer. Said notice shall be mailed to certified mail to town administrator. And I think when the assessors dealt with this, they actually, I believe, it says, upon failure of J&E to fulfill all material obligations of Section A under this agreement, the town reserves the right to apply to the Economic Assistance Coordinating Council for decertification of the project. So it's not within our decision whether or not to decertify the project, but I think there was, when I had checked in with the assessors about that, they had made a presumption that this was null and void because they had not been notified, so they assumed full taxation on the part of J&E. I don't believe that that's what this agreement says. I don't think that we have the right. I think we can apply to the Economic Assistance Coordinating Council for decertification of the project. I don't think that's within our purview.
That was the legal opinion also, that it really was just the non-notification within the 6 months of the sale wasn't enough to make it null and void, that a substantial amount of the conditions needed not to be met.
Okay.
But does the agreement transfer to the new owner?
Yes, it does.
So there is a report that's expected annually, starting with July, due in July of 2020. And so I just wanted to find out how the select board would like to proceed in terms of, did you want to have a written report with the obligations of the TIF agreement provided in writing? How would you like to get the information that we're entitled to get from them?
But if in fact we didn't get the notice that the agreement called for, then that kind of nullified this agreement. So to proceed, you're suggesting we proceed as if it was still in force and expect a report?
No, what I said.
Or do you want to just drop it?
The legal opinion was that it was still in effect and in force.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I had said was, when I had checked in with the assessors, they were under the impression that because they had not received notification, the town had not, that they presumed that that they were subject to full taxation. But that is not according to what our attorney said, and it's not according to, it wasn't enough to make this null and void, and it's not even within our purview to make that decision.
Okay.
So I'm asking, given that we're up to the point where they're receiving a 80% exemption, and their agreement did say that by July 2020 is when a report is due of the reporting on the conditions that they did in fact create 15 to 20 full-time permanent jobs. Because that was the hope, is that in order to get the taxation, they were also going to be doing things that benefit people in Southampton, including hiring residents of Southampton.
So contractually, they haven't breached the agreement. They just owe us a report in July with an update on the contract and how they met the obligation. So yes, from my point of view, I think Ed should just reach out to them, remind them the TIF agreement's in effect and that we would expect a report sometime in July, and they would present how they're meeting the obligations of the TIF agreement. If they're meeting them all, then it's all well and good. If they're not, we need to talk about it.
Okay. Is everybody else in agreement with that? And is there anything else you want to ask about it?
Sorry, I'm just a little confused. Is the report coming from the previous owner or the new owner?
I think it would be from the new owner because, yeah, sorry, Ed.
It's okay.
Go ahead, somebody. The new owner?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, then I would be fine. Yeah, I think a written report is required. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. It might be helpful too, I mean, I'm looking at it right now, but it might be helpful for the other select board members to get a copy of this, especially people that weren't on the board at the time that this was approved and voted by the voters. Is that something you're able to send out, Ed?
What do you want me to send out, Rini? You're breaking up there.
I don't think the select board has had a chance, everybody hasn't had a chance to see this.
Oh, the agreement, you mean?
Yeah.
Sure.
If
Yep.
you could send it out to the select board, that'd be great. All right, no other questions on that? Okay, next on the agenda, somebody have it up?
We had the FY21 budget. Is there more discussion on that?
Oh, yes, that's right, thanks. I think we skipped over that.
We did.
Ed, you want to lead us on that?
Okay, I'm gonna have to, I was having problems printing it, so let me go see if I can get a copy of it that I can go down for you. I'll be right back.
Okay, while you're gone, if it's okay with you, I think we'll go ahead and work on the warrants, okay?
Okay.
In the interest of time. Francine, did you get an answer to your question around the signature on the warrants?
Yeah, they had it, but it wasn't necessary. They'll be in this package. They just scanned in the wrong form.
Okay.
Okay?
You want to go ahead?
All right, it's P20-50 for $280,265.72. And then a payroll deduction warrant 20-50 for $44,881.84.
Okay.
And I signed them both on June 10th.
Okay, any questions on those? The details in our packet?
Yeah.
All right. The only other remaining item other than the FY21 budget is the approval of the license. Lynn Coffey had originally submitted for a graduation party in June, and I believe is looking to reschedule for another date. So I suppose we need to wait for Ed to discuss that, unless we can discuss it now.
All the paperwork is in the package, and she wants to change it to July 26th.
I think the only question I had two questions. The first is, I think it says, I'm trying to go scroll around, so if anybody has it up, doesn't it say less than either 50 or 80 people?
Yeah, I think it's somewhere there.
That's actually not according to the current guidelines of assembly in the state. And the other question I had is that an out-of-town person, I believe it says $175. So I don't know what the deposit is for somebody that rents the pavilion who is from not Southampton. So other than that, I guess we can just talk when he comes back, unless anybody has the answer to those questions.
And is there a new date? I don't think I saw the new date.
No.
Was there?
It's on their certificate. One was crossed out, June 7th was crossed out, and July 26th was entered with marker, it looks like, Chris.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that. All right. But yeah, you're right, Rini. There on the form itself, the anticipated number of guests, it looks like 80. I'm not sure if it's 80 or less or 80 at least. I can't read it.
80 or less, I think it says.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll have to just see when he comes back.
He was going for the 2021 budget. Is that it? That was not what he included in this recent email? It's something else?
Yeah.
It was the first draft of, various asks and.
Okay.
Yep. So I had a new ask from ComCom, for example.
You want to approve that permit?
Well, we need to find, first of all, about the number and also the charge. It says in the form that for an out-of-town resident, the charge is $175 and the check is for $45. So I just wanted to understand why that's different. Is that a deposit or whatever?
Rini, while we're waiting, do you want to confirm the select board meetings for July? Or
Yeah, let's do that.
Sure. There'd be 7/7 and there'd be 7/21, but like he said, it looks like we may end up having another meeting stuck in there for transfers. So we should probably pencil in a date. If the transfers are due, he said by the 13th of July, then he might be talking about something during the week of the 7th. I'm thinking, unless...
In addition to the 7th.
I think that's what he's thinking. Is that what everybody gets from that?
I'm on vacation that week. I'm planning to join unless there's a major conflict, given that these things are through Zoom. So I just want to throw that out there. I'm still planning on attending, but that'll be predicated on family matters.
Yeah, and I am gone that particular day. 7/7 is my birthday, and I am going to be away and not near a Zoom. So I was actually, I think Matt had said that it might be difficult for him to chair. So I don't know, Francine, if you're willing to do that. That's actually your birthday too.
It is.
I hope we don't have it on a Monday. Tuesday rather. Let's move it for a couple of days and do one meeting rather than having two meetings the same week.
Right. I mean, if he needs more time, I think it makes sense to move it.
Okay, I might be able to do then the 9th if that's the case.
That would work.
I'll go to your birthday party then, Rini.
Well, you can come on up to the North Shore and have some lobsters with me if you want.
That would work.
Okay. Yeah, the 9th looks good for me. That would be great.
When he comes back, then we'll try to advocate for that then.
Yeah, I would certainly rather do one meeting than two,
Okay.
and the 9th could work.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, that's good.
That would be better. So then it would be the 9th, and then it would be the 21st then.
Right.
Yep.
Ed, we finished the meeting without you.
Oh, awesome. Good job. Thank you.
Just kidding.
I'm going to leave the room more often.
I wish.
All right, so you're talking about FY21, and did you send, you didn't send out a draft for that, did you?
Yes. It should have been the third one in that email, and it's also in the Dropbox.
Okay, yeah, I just actually looked at it, yeah.
And this is the one that's actually in Excel.
Okay, and this is only our first look at this, so we're going to have to probably have a little bit more detail on it. What do you want to proceed? Do you want to? So you met with the various department heads, and based on their ask by department, was this sort of take it all in and add it all up and then figure out what's doable and not?
This is the starting point of what they've asked for.
Okay.
And I will tell you, it probably doesn't have everything in it, because if you would turn around and consider the ask from the Conservation Commission for a part-time conservation agent, that would get added into this. It does include the contractual increases for the union employees. It does not include any COLAs for non-union employees. But this is the starting point, and the asks are about $500,000 over what the forecasted revenues are for fiscal year 21, and
including what we are fearing relative to state money to local towns, right?
Yeah, and as we delve into what the actual revenue numbers, that deficit could get bigger, even larger.
Yes.
Exactly. And just as an example, the original revenue projected increase was about $350,000 for the town for fiscal year 21. So
we'd be 100 with that. There's still, that's factored into this?
No, that's factored in here, but
okay.
Yeah, but just for example, the employee benefits alone were a $139,000 increase for fiscal year 21 on its own, and the education through all of the accounts, whether it's Hampshire Regional, Norris Elementary, vocational schools, transportation, or whatever, that projected and asked for or requested increase was $337,000.
So I'm just cruising down the gray column because that's where, the difference is.
Right.
So I'm looking at the big numbers, and the big numbers are, like $8,000 increase town clerk salary, $12,000 increase emergency management stipend.
Right.
So I'm just curious, you said fire chief salary, I mean, this is all, you said what's not included in is any COLAs for non-union. So,
Right. It does not include COLAs for non-union, correct?
so the ones I just mentioned are contracts, right?
Well, the ones you just mentioned were their requests for increased salary.
Okay.
It doesn't mean some of them may be under a contract and are negotiating it, but others, that was what they were asking for.
Okay.
And you don't have the Concom conservation agent in here, though, do you?
No, because that just came through last week. And that's, okay, is it a budgetary item or is it would that be an article item? So.
Wow, okay. This will be another painful process, I can tell.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
where are these forms that you're looking at? I can't seem to find them. They're not in the packet.
Yeah, this is a separate email that says the title of the email is Budget and 112 Budget Worksheets.
Okay, and which file is it?
It's the
Excel file.
FY21.
You got
These
two
are the,
PDFs and an Excel. This one's the Excel.
Yeah,
and there's a $500,000 difference.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you can see
497.
there's some pretty big numbers on here. I would actually like to see another column. I mean, that basically just has contractual obligations and see where it lands in terms of the difference. Do you have that column?
What do you want to do? You want to add another column to do what?
Well, basically, there's a column for FY20, and then there's a column for FY21 request, and then there's a column for the difference between the two,
Yeah.
so we can see where the big asks are or where the differences are. I'd like to see a column that says, assuming that we're just meeting contractual obligations, where do we come in as a total obligation? I mean, if $500,000 is totally like wide open ask, I'd like to know at a minimum, what are our obligations?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What has no wiggle room exactly? I mean, you look down
Right.
and some of these departments are huge.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is like Christmas here.
Yeah.
Please, yeah, I mean, like, wires, yeah, I definitely want to know which ones are contractual, which is versus not. I mean, I wasn't, okay.
Yeah, like,
We can do that.
yeah. I think from there, that'll be clear, like the difference between what's the minimum. I think we need to know that only because of the worry about the state funds.
Yeah, how much we may not be getting from them for this year as we did last year.
I mean, does anybody want to spend the time now to kind of breeze down the list and say, okay, let's take a look at like some of the go by department and just kind of get a little bit more information from Ed as far as where these figures are coming from, or do you want to just sit with this and come back with another column and what are we all obligated to, and then take it from there? What would you prefer to do?
I think I would rather study this a little bit and talk about it the next meeting. I mean, this is the first time we're seeing it, so.
Okay.
I guess I just wanted to know, are the various capital items, I know Matt had talked about a lot of them last meeting or a meeting before, that the Capital Improvement Committee had recommended, I think, and would hopefully be on the town warrant for the town meeting rather. Are those included in here already or not?
No, that's not, those aren't budgetary.
Those aren't budgetary because those deal with free cash accounts.
Okay.
Well, they also deal with the capital.
Well, that's what I mean. The three free cash, I call them free cash accounts, probably not appropriate, but op stabilization, capital account, and literal free cash.
Yeah, not budgeted.
Yeah.
So Ed, a question. So if I'm understanding what you did, you sent the current budget out to the departments and said, fill in what you want for this year. And did they have to supply you with any backup for the increases, or was this just the first ask and then you need to go back and get detail?
There is some detail, and some departments are better at it than others on the tabs down below and that workbook. But at this point, and so,
First preliminary round.
Some of the larger increases, I would probably go back and get some more specifics on.
Yeah.
And was there a cap on wage increases projected here? Was it 2%, or was it just whatever? I'm trying to look at a pattern here.
Those aren't included in here.
But there are those that look like they're in excess of 2%.
Well,
That's my question.
Some people didn't follow the directions and just put in, rather than putting in what they had and relying on a COLA of what they thought they should have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm seeing a $22,000 increase in salary, a $14,000 increase in salary, an $8,000 increase in salary. So clearly, we need to look at a column that's contractual. What are our minimum obligations?
Yeah.
And if that can be sent out to us before the next meeting, and then we can go department by department and get a little bit more detail on these. Does that sound like a plan?
Yes, somewhere, yes, if we could have that column that would show us what would be a 2% increase, let's say, versus what's here, so that we have some numbers to look at between what the ask is and what, we're going to be may or may not be in a position to provide.
Okay, so that's different from what I said. What I had said.
I know that.
Okay, so are people in agreement that they want a column that includes contractual plus a 2%?
I wouldn't put the 2% in now because we can't be sure what we're going to be able to give. Could be less, could be more, but I think contractual, like you said, Rini, makes a lot of sense because we know that's the base number we need to work with. We're keeping the departments as they are going forward.
But I would also put in the 2% just so we have something to compare with what's been asked for and the 2%.
You mean on a separate column, Francie?
No, in that same column where it's contractual,
Right.
we have what is ordinary, usually the customary increase that we've been able to give. I'd like to see what that looked like too.
But will that inflate that number a little bit because we're not sure if we're able to give that this year? Wouldn't you want to see without that, then we can decide?
Well, we're looking at numbers right now that are in excess, way in excess of 2%. So I'd like to see what 2% look like.
But I think Rini wants to pare that down to where it's just the basics that we need to do. Am I?
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Right.
And I do too. I'm with Rini on that. We can add the 2% later if we get to it. I want to see what the raw numbers are.
All we have to do is have a column, and then if it's not too hard to do, just come up with a total number of what would an additional 2% salary that increase be without having it be built into the column.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to be confused again, but I'm looking at the left column, and it said recommended FY20 level funded plus 2%. Isn't that column already there?
That's FY.
That was last year.
Yeah, that's what the fiscal year 20 budget was labeled as.
That was last year.
So it's not
This
new
year.
2%. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So there was a 2% raise last time, and yeah, I think so. If you can do that, Ed, that'd be great. If you could send out a column that would basically let us know what is a minimum contractual obligation, not including any of these asks, and then if it's not too difficult to determine, what is the total additional amount that would be at 2% for non-union COLAs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions before we move on from here?
No, I mean, a lot of these increases are wages.
Yeah. Yep.
That's where the bulk of it is.
Yeah. There's some
Just talking
requested
about bulk.
increases in some other items besides wages too. But-
I
Yeah.
can see that clearly. I'm just talking about bulk and majority.
Yep.
That's
Okay. So Ed, we have just two other items, I think, under regular, 2 or 3 other items. And the one that we, just so you know, that we ended up, Francine reviewed the warrants while you stepped out, okay?
Okay.
And then we started this discussion about the rental agreement of the Kona Park Pavilion, but there was just a couple of questions. One of them is, it says gathering of, I think, less than 80 people.
No, I said the estimate was 80. This is one that we had, the select board had originally approved for, like, I think it was June 7th,
Right.
which obviously didn't happen. She does have another date for the pavilion of July 26th. So, and obviously I would say the same thing. I would request that the select board approve it with the change of date and not charge them another one-day fee since they didn't get to use the first one, and also have it again, just like the first one was, on a conditional basis that, okay, the pavilion actually is allowed to be used and the group gathering size that is allowed at that point in time is not exceeded.
Okay. And also the other question I had is that the check was for 45. I think the fee for a non-resident was 175. Was that just a deposit or what?
Hang on a second.
I have another budget question when we can. Not, I don't want to mix the thing here, but I found something that I'm questioning.
Okay.
Okay, so what was your question, Rini?
The check just was for 45, and it says that the charge to rent the pavilion for a non-resident is 175.
The 45 is, and my apologies because I shouldn't have included that check in this public document, but that's for the one-day beer and wine,
Okay.
not the pavilion rental. The pavilion rental is 175.
Okay.
You're correct.
All right, thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Would someone like to make a motion to approve the date, new date conditional on the ability to gather with the appropriate number of people?
So move.
Make the motion.
So Francine approved. John, you want to make that a second?
Sure.
Okay. Francine, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Fishman, aye.
Chris, you're muted.
Roland, die. Yeah.
Balls
Okay.
Martin, aye.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead, Matt.
okay, so, I mean, I'm happy to sound ridiculous here, but there's part of me that feels like I just found a $270,000 mistake.
Well, I hope you're right.
Favor, I
And
hope.
I know what he's referring to, and no, you didn't, Matt.
What?
I know what you're referring to. You're referring to the fact that the Hampshire Regional Capital for the addition is coming off, correct?
Yeah, the math doesn't work on this.
Yeah, it does, because of the fact that that $270,000 capital was voted as a debt exclusion, so therefore the debt exclusion revenue also falls off.
So it's a wash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, but totally get that. But can you walk me through that? Because the only reason is because when you go to that, it's in the school account, guys. If you want to scroll to it,
I looked at it.
I just want to understand how the math works, because when you're looking at it, and Chris, you're lying again. I'm sorry. It's the movement in that your device is distracting. For the sake of doing math here, I'm trying to figure, I'm going to need a good explanation. I don't know if you can give it as to how this works, because, each section of this budget, the total, it rolls down to a total, which is highlighted in yellow. Yep. And that's for each section. And if you compare the column, the column for fiscal 21 to fiscal year 20, I mean, how does that 270 grand not get backed out when it does get backed out of the revenue columns? There's part of me that's like not.
It gets backed out of both in this particular case, because as soon as the obligation to pay is gone, the revenue is gone.
I don't know that. There's some, I can't make sense of that. And maybe it's obviously, well, I guess it's me, but like when you look at the two totals for fiscal year 21 requests and fiscal year 20 requests in that school column, it's only an $81,000 increase. Or yeah. No, sorry, it's a $66,000 increase.
Yeah, and you know what? I had to go back and change the math formulas in that far right column for fiscal year 21-20, because originally it was showing a $661,000 difference.
Okay.
Because the math was pulling from the wrong columns, and I probably didn't look close enough at the first column and the second column. My guess is that probably the same is true there, that I'd have to go back and might have to change those formulas also.
Well, yeah, I mean, just because when I'm looking at what the schools across the board here, Hampshire region, like all of this, if you're just doing totals, if you're just doing totals in these columns, there's only a $66,000 difference, not a $337,000 difference.
Yeah, I'll go back and take a look at that first and second column. Like I say, originally that third column had a $661,000 difference in it.
Yeah, but that's not because you changed. That's not because you just changed which cells it was selecting, correct? I mean, it should just be selecting the total.
Right.
Yellow total for each section, which it is. Right. I checked that. I checked that the $846,000, which is the difference between the budgets, is pulling the yellow. I mean, I am good at Excel. It's pulling the yellow total in column 3, which is the difference. So it's pulling the correct number. It's just, for me, the question is that every other section, the column 3, that the difference column, every other section is the cumulative effect. It's the sum total of what's going on in column 3, with the exception of the school, which does not factor in the negative $270,000. If you highlight that and you do, and you do F2 on that, you can see that it's not pulling it's not pulling that last cell.
No, it's designed that way because of the fact that it really isn't a deduction. No. Because you don't have the same amount of revenue to make up for that. And I see what you're saying on the other two columns also. And yeah, column 1 would have the $270,000 in it, but you also had $270,000 more of revenue for that debt exclusion in that particular year, which in this case was fiscal year 20.
Okay. Just another question, what is that Hampshire Regional Capital? Like, what is it? What is that?
That was the debt from the addition.
From the addition?
Yeah.
And it's $270,000 per year.
Right. And last year was the last year net payment. So that's fallen off the debt schedule.
Interesting. Okay. And so that's a direct correlation.
Yeah, direct correlation. And now conversely, if that was on there and it wasn't a debt exclusion, or if it had been done through a proposition, and I know you and I have this, because it's still, you're right, it's still, a debt exclusion is still a proposition 2.5 override, but has more restrictions on it.
Yes.
If it was a straight proposition 2.5 override,
Then the revenue would stay.
then the revenue would stay, correct.
Yes, but if it was done as a debt exclusion 2.5 override, then it would fall off.
Right, it just matches your obligation at that time.
Do we know which one it was?
Which one what? Oh, it was a debt exclusion.
Okay.
It was.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, all set?
I guess I'm just sad.
Oh God, I know how you feel, because yeah, I went through that and found it the first time I was looking at it and said, ooh, you know.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. That's what we needed.
Because I'm looking at it, and of course, the first time I looked at it was 661,000, and then I said, the math doesn't look right on this. So I started looking around at it, and I said, this is pulling from the wrong place. So then it went down to the 337, and then I was looking at that 272, and I said, I goes, let me go up and talk with Vicky about this, because I'm pretty sure that was a debt exclusion, and it was.
Well, then let me just throw another thing out there. So let's go down to, let me just hammer this out here so that you can go forth and conquer with this. But when you go down to the debt servicing stuff, like debt service principal, debt service interest, I'm going to claim some naiveness here, but why do those columns total when presumably a lot of that stuff is under the same theory?
Because what you see there in the fiscal year 21 request, if it was done as a debt exclusion, it's still on the books.
Well, no, it's dropping off on the 21, like pumper tanker. I mean, that is translating down to negative. That is translating down to the math on that. Like pumper tanker.
That one I'd have to go back, and I don't know if that was a debt exclusion or not. I'd have to go back and check, but you could be right.
We just we got to just make sure that we're treating these the same way, because if we're not treating them the same way, then I mean, my gosh, the 270 grand would be very nice to treat the way that the pumper tanker is being treated, and frankly, the same way that the Pequot Pond sewer is being treated.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? I just want to understand that, because we're treating those one way and we're treating the Hampshire Regional one a different way, and I just want to understand why. I understand the concept of revenue falling off, but we got to treat these.
And like I say, that might be the same for those two, or it might not. So I'll have to delve into those.
That'll make the problem worse if that's the case. But.
Okay, ready to move on then? The next agenda item is other documents requiring signatures, and it's the Highway Collective Bargaining Agreement.
Can we go back to any other business?
Yes, we do need to do that.
Yes, under new business?
Yes. Any other necessary business? Cannot wait till the July 7th meeting?
We need to fill him in about the meeting date that we discussed instead of July 7th.
Yeah. While you were gone, we talked about having a meeting on the 9th instead of the 7th, and being able to do transfers and having one meeting instead of two. And it's all Francine and my birthday on the 7th, and we're going to be all partying with the select board, and you're invited too.
Oh, thank you. Now I'll just have to look at those two IFB and RFQ documents and make sure there's no dates in there that say July 7th.
That's right.
But thank you for letting me know that.
But we're ready for the quorum, so you should still post the meeting. Okay.
Okay. Just wanted to go back to any other necessary business. The select board and myself would have received an email from Vicky Morrow on Monday.
Right.
Yes.
I'm writing to request an additional week's carryover of my vacation for a total of 2 weeks to be carried over from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21. By the time the decision was made, reopen the town hall to employees, it was not enough time for me to use what vacation time I had left without closing my office for the entire month of June. I thought it would be in the best interest of the town to not go ahead and do that, but take days each week to use up as much time as I could. Even with the allowing me to carry over the 2 weeks, I still will be losing some time, except for the first week or so of the pandemic, where I worked from home. I have been here every day working my normal schedule. I have been in contact with other communities, and they have paid out any vacation time not used due to the pandemic out of the CARES Act, which is another option. I hope you would consider this request.
The first thought that came to my mind, does it go to the PQB first, since they have a policy of not carrying over more than a week?
No, there are 3 personal service contracts currently that have clauses in them that leaves vacation carryover to the select board, that being the town accountant, the police chief, and the town administrator.
Okay.
And the contract does say, though, carryover of 1 week, correct?
It does. I will say that, that's 1 week under normal circumstances. I would probably say that, due to this year and the pandemic and COVID-19, it is, I won't even say unusual circumstances. I will say extremely unusual circumstances.
Have there been other employees who have requested from PQB carryover of more than 1 week?
The only one that comes to my mind would have been, I think, there were a few in the highway department that had more time on the books than a week, and my understanding was the PPPB did a week's carryover on them, but I can double check.
Yeah, but the question I ask is there any employee that have requested more than 1 week carryover? Yeah,
like I say, there were a couple of instances in the highway department that had more time than that had requested to get whatever they left it open-ended of getting whatever they could out of it. Yeah.
And I know this because it's a contract versus people who are employed without a contract. Do we have anybody in that other category who would fall into the same situation of having more than a week that they would like to carry forward?
Which category? You mean the contractual employee category?
Well, I'm talking about the personal contract versus...
The personal service contract?
Right.
I would fall into that category. However, I was comfortable. I was only going to ask for the 5 days, even though I have more accumulated than that. But that's me.
I'm thinking of people who don't have a personal services contract, and they're not part of the collective bargaining. Are any of those people in that situation of having more than a week?
That's what I just asked, and he said the highway department, but that would have to go to PQB for approval, and I don't know, Matt, I don't know if there's been an approval of anybody else in town that has requested 2 weeks that was approved. Do you know?
I don't know where Matt, yeah.
Matt's moving around. He's, Matt, can you hear me?
No.
You there, Matt? Matt?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Matt, do you know, has PQB addressed the vacation carryover, and has any employee in town requested more than 1 week that you're aware of?
We haven't met on this.
Okay.
And no. No, I'm not aware of more than 1 week, other than the fact that I did see that request.
Yeah. Back when the select board originally voted, I thought the PPPB took up the request for Randall Kemp and the 2 highway employees.
That said 1 week, Ed.
Did it?
It did say 1 week, but I'm just going to look it up to confirm before I can look it up real quick.
I thought it was open-ended, that they said how much time they had left, but didn't really ask for.
Yeah, just hold on a second. I'll find it.
Ed, while we're waiting, would it work in your mind with the transfers for us to meet on the 9th and take care of all the business that's needed by the 13th?
That's a Thursday, right?
Yeah.
So I hope we don't have any. You never know, but I would hope that we don't have any come up, like on the 12th.
The 12th is a Sunday.
Oh, then I'll say the 13th then. But, I mean, the 9th is better than the 7th.
Yeah, so the we approved 1 week for some people. That would have been at our June. Are you guys there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you want to know the names of the people, or?
So you have the request letters there?
Hold on, let's see. I mean, I have Randall. Yes, I have. Let's see. I do. For the ones that we have discretion over. Now Art has stated that we do not that we do not have jurisdiction over accountant, police chief, and town administrator, because they have personal service contracts with the town. The select board will approve these carryovers, not the PPB.
But the letters on Randall and the 2
I have those letters. I'm looking at them.
Aren't they written open? I don't remember any of them asking to carry over a week. I remember them saying that so-and-so has X amount of time left, would like to carry over vacation.
Well, I'm looking at Randall's, and it's pursuant to the rules and regulations. I'm writing to request the maximum carryover allowed of 1 week of unused FY20 vacation to 21. I cite COVID pandemic as extraordinary circumstance.
Okay,
so,
that's Randall.
Randall requested one. Then, let me see here. This one's a little bit longer. So then Randall wrote on the behalf of two other individuals in his department who yeah, I mean, this is where it gets a little tricky here. So one of his department members, Todd, wrote to carry over 40 hours of remaining vacation time. And so did David. They
Okay.
both requested 40-hour carryover. However, Randall wrote a letter on their behalf, which is separate from his letter requesting a week of his time. He basically outlines the amount of time that they are at risk of losing, and he was advocating to try to get us to approve more than a week, given how much they didn't use this year.
Okay, that's what I had remembered then. Thanks, Matt.
But yet they had written but each of them had written and signed for only 1 week, and the PPB approved
The 1 week.
the week.
Okay.
What is the, in the accountant office, the assistant accountant, what hours does she work?
Joyce, I believe, works 20 hours a week. I think it's like 9 to 2.
Okay. So does the office have to close then when Vicky's not there?
If Vicky and Joyce weren't there, yes, it would.
Okay. I guess I was referring to her letter about closing the office, but I thought she had an assistant that also works in the office.
Yeah, and I know her assistant is on Thursday nights, PPBB agenda for carrying over vacation time. That I can't remember how much, but I know she wasn't able to use all of it either.
I can tell you if it's on the agenda. Yeah, we approved a week for the water superintendent as well, by the way, with those highway people back on June 4th. And then the upcoming one, is, what do you want to know? Do you want to know all of them?
No, is the assistant accountant on there?
Yeah, she's on there 1 week. There's some others on there too, but all of them are 1 week with the exception of library, but I'm not really sure what that means. 19.5 hours. Probably less than a week, I guess, but
Right.
I don't know.
That would probably be the equivalent of her week.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but.
Well, I would say it's less than probably a week because, yeah, we'd have to get to the 20 hours to be entitled to.
No vacation, yeah.
Yeah.
What do folks want to do?
I would encourage you to seriously consider this. Vicky's a very hard worker. It's a busy time of year. As we get closer to closing the book, she's very conscientious. And like I say, I personally think it's extreme circumstances this year.
I don't disagree with you. This is an unusual year in so many respects. I just want to make sure, again, that whatever it is that we do it for everyone as they're eligible for it, so that we're consistent.
I agree. This decision is also one that will follow us, as these things do. So that's just an important thing to remember.
Yeah.
Will we need to go back and revisit the highway request, even though they put 1 week they have a lot more time left over and Randall was advocating for that, or is that a closed door? And just what you were saying, Maureen, I just want to be careful of what we do.
Well, it's actually in the hands of PQB. This
Yeah.
is in their hands.
Yeah, it doesn't fall under the select board.
Okay.
These particular ones in this case do.
Yeah, but we also would set the PQB up with this. I mean, whatever we decide is going to trickle down to them.
Yeah. I agree.
I mean, just to further discuss, I mean, we generally don't extend at all, correct?
Right.
And so we're extending now. We've done a week, and now we're being asked for 2.
I think one of the issues, if everything was open out there where people could take vacation, Vicki was here, she could have taken vacation, but really the whole United States was closed down. So it is such a special, situation. I think if we make a motion to do this, we should hinge it on, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, this is a one-shot opportunity, and state that this will not set a precedent, kind of set it up that way.
Yeah, but how do you deal with the fact that, like, I'm reading a note from Randall advocating for his guys. I mean, there's one guy that literally has only used 17 hours of vacation out of over 200 hours of vacation that he had.
Yeah, if they could tie it into the COVID, then PQB might want to relook at it, but we're not sure. I mean, I guess in general, we don't overpay our folks, and they're all hard workers. I would hate to take a week's vacation away from them because of a pandemic and that they couldn't take vacation time. I mean, we all know vacation time is sacred, and every week we need to be out there and just relaxing so we come back and work on it. So,
And I do know some other communities that were able to pay out some vacation time and additional pay. And I also know it wasn't through the CARES Act, but
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Is there a way to compromise and give the week carryover as we have been doing, but then do a payout from the CARES Act for the other week?
cannot do a payout for the CARES Act. Like I say, I had heard that same rumor from somebody because they came to me and asked me if they could get paid out for additional vacation time if they couldn't get more than a week, because they had heard that a relative of theirs had been paid out through the CARES Act in another community. And I happen to know the town administrator in that community, and I called them up and said, "Are you paying out vacation time out of the CARES Act?" And he said, "No, absolutely not." He knew the person that I was talking about and said that got voted to be paid from the general fund.
PQB has to figure out the highway one, but my assumption would be if Randall was advocating for it, he knew that he would be short-staffed for a couple extra weeks during the year, but he was okay with that. It wouldn't cost any more in the budget. It would mean that he would have people out. The same with Vicki, and I guess the question would go to you. If we give her 2 weeks, are you okay with her taking that time off and not having the town accountant in the office? Will that affect the office, or can you get through it?
Personally, I would be very good with that with you. If you gave her extended the 2 weeks, I would be very good. If the select board decided that, okay, we're only going to extend it a week, but we want, you and Vicki to try and locate another week's equivalent in pay that we can transfer in here to cover the second week.
I'm not in favor of doing anything that is precedent setting. Been there, done that. In terms of just giving her a week's payout, it's going to have a ripple effect.
I don't like the payout either. That's okay, because we've got to do something with this. I'm going to make a motion that because of the pandemic, this is a one-time situation, and this motion includes a one-time only offer to allow her to take an extra week into the next fiscal year, but it has to be taken by the end of fiscal 21.
So carry over of 1 week? John, is that what you're saying? Carry over of 1 week?
No, 1 week is in her contract, we can carry over. I'm saying the 2 weeks based on this special pandemic. I don't think we're going to have this type of situation again, hopefully not in our lifetime, but I think it won't set a precedent if we peg it to a particular situation. And the pandemic is one I think I'm okay with.
Well, everybody experienced the pandemic, but anyway, is there a second?
I'll second it.
What, Matt?
I'll second it.
Okay, other discussion, questions?
I mean, I come back to, this is a tough one for me because I understand these were very unusual circumstances this year. But to say it's not going to happen again next year, I don't have a crystal ball. I hope that's true, but whatever is going on with this virus may come back and we'll be in the same situation. It comes back to precedent, and it comes back to me, are we treating it, will everyone be treated the same? And if we can say yes,
Yeah.
for
So
this
John,
one time only.
how are we saying that we're treating everybody the same?
Well, if there are other people who are in a similar situation who have more than 1 week to carry over, whether they're under collective bargaining or personal services agreement or under an at-will employment situation, or if they find themselves with more, like the person you're talking about, somebody had 200 hours of vacation.
No, so I can say that we're not doing that.
Well,
the people are trying to carry over 1 week, and we've been approving that.
Anybody under contract, Francine, I think we have to stick by the contract because you're not going to renegotiate a contract. But
Contract that we're talking about says a carryover of 1 week. So we're talking about changing the contract.
right, but it allows us to do that because we have control over that. We don't have control over the highway department as PQP has control. It's up to them.
No, I know, but we're serving them up with a problem by doing what we're doing over here. That's the tail's wagging the dog, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Or was it the other way around?
Yeah.
Did you serve us up?
Yeah.
I mean, having been, a manager and director for so many years, I mean, if you don't treat your folks well and you don't take special instances into account and we're just a hard line, I don't think that's the right way to.
Well, so I agree with that, but I don't know I think a lot of these 1 week vacation requests, like, we're not supposed to carry over any vacation. Is that true or not?
That is true.
So so I guess my argument there, John, like, if I'm just playing, I don't know where I stand on this. This is a difficult one, but we're carrying over a lot of 1 week vacation time where I don't think we're supposed to be carrying over any.
Well, they can come to us based on a special condition and ask for our approval.
Yeah, the person
We've been granting 1 week on special approval where we otherwise don't have to approve that, and now we have the 2 week request.
Yeah. Correct.
That could easily feed back into all of those 1 week requests now becoming 2, 3, 4 week. Like, hey, why don't I just do all of my time?
Well, obviously we say no to it, but yeah, I just think it's such a special.
It's just, where is the line? Because you got to be consistent. So if we're going to do 2 weeks here, like, we got to be prepared to do 2 weeks across the board, and so does PQB.
Yeah, for this pandemic, I wouldn't disagree, but we can't be so hardline that we don't have any flexibility either. So it is one of these, tough ones.
Well, my experience of being on the select board thus far is every time we have done something like this, it comes back to bite us. So for me, it's more of an equity issue. We're setting up the PQB. They've already addressed this with certain other employees. I know that this is within our contractual obligation and that other people are under the PQB, but I think if you remember correctly, we had voted without authority to give everybody a 1 week carryover. And so I think the personnel policies allow for a 1-week carryover under extraordinary circumstances, and this is an extraordinary circumstance. So I still feel like we need to be careful about precedent setting.
It is a tough one.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
In a second, is there any further question or discussion?
What is the motion again? Just so that I know.
That we allow the town accountant this one-time opportunity to roll over 2 weeks that have to be used by the end of fiscal 21, and it is based strictly on the fact that it is an extraordinary situation, which is a worldwide pandemic.
Okay, any further question or discussion then? Then let's do a roll call vote.
Martin, aye.
Roland, no. I'm on the precedent setting thing. It's not. I'm not trying to be insensitive. I feel like we're rolling over a week right now. We need to be consistent, and we're stretching for the week. So it's just consistency. That's all. It has nothing to do with anything else. So I'm going to vote no on this.
Okay.
Follows no.
You're on mute, Fran.
I see that now, yes, okay. I'm gonna vote aye.
Quorum, no. So it does not carry. Would someone like to make another motion?
I move for a town accountant to carry over 1 week's of vacation.
Is there a second?
Now second that.
Any discussion? A roll call vote?
Tishman, aye.
Falls aye.
Roland, aye.
Martin, aye.
Roden, aye. All right, thank you.
Who seconded that? Who seconded that?
I did.
Thank you, Francine.
So Ed, I have a question for you. This was under any other business. We're up until the 23rd of June. We don't have another select board meeting until 7/9. You had mentioned that you were going to request a carryover of a week. Is that something that you were hoping to do tonight, or are you going to, what would you like to do about that?
As long as you voted on Vicky's, I was actually just assuming that you had already voted to carry over a week maximum for anyone, and that would apply to me. So in this case, you voted on Vicky's, so I will ask for the select board to consider carrying over 1 week, 5 days, 40 hours for me due to the COVID-19 pandemic, that I haven't been able to use all my vacation time into fiscal year 21.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay, so Matt and then Francine, any discussion?
Just out of curiosity, Ed, how much time will you lose with this?
I didn't even want to go look. My guess is I'll probably lose a week, at least, maybe longer. But like I say, I didn't even bother going to look.
This stinks.
Yeah. There's a motion and a second, and any further discussion? We had a roll call vote.
Tishman, aye.
Falls aye.
Roland, aye.
Martin, aye.
Roden, aye. I just want to say something. I work in a business which is hospice, and I really strongly encourage everybody that I work with to take every single bit of holiday floating, personal day, vacation day, because it's a really, really hard job, and everybody really needs to take vacation. And this is a pattern that happens at the end of every single year, and I get that the highway department has been down, and I get that we had a pandemic, but I just want to say that I'm hoping the culture in the town of Southampton is not that people don't take vacation, because I think vacation is an extremely important thing to do on a regular basis, and I just encourage people to consider doing that. It came up with the building inspector year after year, and I hope that people that the culture is that people can cover for each other. You need to have time off. And I just wanted to say that. And I know that I'm not being sensitive to COVID or anything else. I just want to say that I just think that it's important as workers in this country that tend to be workaholics that we all take time off. It's a wellness thing. So
Yeah.
I think that pretty much covers, actually, no, we have pending items. We have no minutes. We have pending items. Matt wanted to say something about the Green Community Grant.
Well,
I
Ed and I had a couple of discussions surrounding this with the custodian at Norris School. Ed, do you want to give the update?
Which highlight of the day, Matt?
Yeah, it was great. I thought it was. It was a highlight for me.
Oh, God.
Chris, would you mind muting for now, just for a minute?
What's that?
Chris needs to mute.
Muting. Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of background.
Yeah, Tom Lavelli had called me up from Norris School today, asking if I had had any updates on the company that was going to give a, let's say, how would you say, project quote at Norris School to change the lighting at the school. And the person that he was referring to, I actually had talked to probably about a month ago, but hadn't heard from him since. Matt actually ended up getting involved with it and giving me a call this afternoon, and actually probably the stories of the custodian at the school and my stories don't quite line up, but that may have to do with the person we're dealing with from this vendor. And I had talked to him about a month ago, and his company is an Eversource approved vendor. And he had called me up and told me that they had some wonderful new projects that Eversource was doing and some great incentives, and wanted to get back out here and redo the program for Norris. And I said, that's fine. But however, if we're going to use any of the DOER Green Grant money, you got to provide me with the paperwork showing the energy savings assessment that goes along with it, because DOER has to approve of it before we can sign off on it. And the custodian was under the impression that I already had the paperwork and it just wasn't getting signed. So after a bunch of phone calls today between Tom Lavelli, Matt, myself, and what have you, and this vendor, turns out that, yes, when he called me up a month ago, he had a project set up for Norris for lighting and mechanical repair that he was going to move forward on. But he had to take out the mechanical repair from the proposal because Eversource wasn't going to pay for the mechanical repair. So he had to redo the paperwork and put us in as a different application, which he has done. Supposedly, he believes that this might be a net zero project, which means that the incentives would pay from Eversource would pay for the project, so we wouldn't have to even go and use any of our DOER Green Grant money. And he did tell me that he had another walkthrough scheduled with Norris School on Thursday, July, I think it's
2nd.
Oh, I was going to say the 3rd. That's how good my brain is right now. 2nd at 10 a.m. So I have penciled myself in for that particular walkthrough so I can be there, and hopefully we're all on the same page, and he will have paperwork that shows us that this is a net zero project, that we don't need DOER green grant funding, which is we'd have to get approval from and be reimbursed for, and that I can bring that back to the select board for signing, and we can move forward and actually have that done this summer.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the gist of it today. It sounds like this vendor was playing a little bit of a game between Ed and Tom, and so we kind of got to the bottom of this, and hopefully we'll have paperwork on July 2nd, and we'll be able to submit for this and have it taken care of while the kids aren't in school. And obviously, as our biggest building, if we can get those lights figured out, that'll be a pretty massive cost reduction.
Absolutely. And the other thing is I do know that they will, if they have to, work at nights. So, but obviously if we're going to get it for free and there's cost savings, we'd like to get them swapped out as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, I would just say, just as our biggest building and the highest energy draw, I mean, even if we don't get them for free and we have to use some of the DOER money, I mean, we should start doing that. I mean, we know that that's the biggest thing on our list in terms of the biggest bang for our buck in terms of energy savings. Like, I really just think we should just go for it, check one thing off the list, get one thing done, and then figure out the best way to use the money on the next best thing, the next best energy savings.
Yeah, like I say, we just have to be careful about that, because we do want to pick off the low-hanging fruit that returns the most,
of course,
savings, because we are tied into basically guaranteeing that we will reduce our energy usage by 20% over 5 years.
Yeah, so as long as everything that we do decreases by more than 20%. I mean, with the lights alone in that school, that's going to decrease it by probably over 50%. If any of you have done LED lights in your house, it's a game changer.
It's a massive savings.
Well, and the plus side of that too is that they last so long that you save on some maintenance costs of changing some bulbs, and I can only imagine if they're going to do some like in the auditorium or the gym or whatever. The fact that those are so high up, it's a pain to get in there and do them.
Well, actually, that was one of the things that Tom told me today. He's like, look, he's like, I barely have any more bulbs left. I haven't bought bulbs in a long time, and I don't want to buy bulbs. I just want to get this done.
Sure.
So hopefully this vendor will have his act together on July 2nd.
Yeah, hopefully. And again, I've been saying that this is money in the bank, $130-something thousand for showing significant energy savings. We don't want to lose any of it.
No, that's for sure.
Good. Anything else on the pending items?
Yeah, I just had one question. I thought we said that there was a third person that might have a carryover leave issue, similar to Ed and Vicky.
I don't believe that. No, I don't think so. I think the PQB addressed that issue and gave a 1-week carryover, 40 hours, but I think we talked about who in their contract, where is out of our jurisdiction, which is basically Ian, the police chief, Ed, and Vicky.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are in our jurisdiction, those people.
Right.
And have we done anything with Ian, I guess is my question.
I don't think there was a request.
No, there hasn't been.
How about the fire chief? Isn't he also under this?
His current contract does not have this clause in it, so his is going to the PPPB. Okay. However, as part of his negotiations, I'm sure he's going to ask that it be consistent with the other personal service contract and move that approval to the select board.
Okay.
And so if the fire chief doesn't, if the police chief doesn't put in a request, he's lost any idea of carryover because we won't meet again in time, right?
Right, but he may not have any carryover either. The notices were sent out, so.
Okay. Just trying to be fair.
We need an HR department.
Any other business or pending items that you'd like to talk about?
Did you, when I was out of the room, vote to sign the highway collective bargaining agreement?
No.
I think we started to mention that, and then we got diverted off of that. So let's discuss that. So that's something required for signature.
Yes, and as you'll remember, we negotiated the contract. We did the memorandum of understanding out of that negotiation. So that was signed. That's what was used to do the funding, transfer monies to take care of that contract. This is, I have now taken the changes from the MOU and incorporated it into the existing collective bargaining agreement, so it's updated. And now that needs a select board signature.
Okay, so I'll need a motion then to sign that.
Okay, I move to approve the collective bargaining agreement for the highway department.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Fishman, aye.
Roland, aye.
Falls eye.
Aye.
Groden, aye, okay. That's all set? And that does that need, who needs to sign that?
At least 3 of you, so I will print out a couple of copies and make arrangements to get at least 3 or 4 of your signatures on it.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
And then I have to do the updates to the police officers and the dispatchers contracts the same way, so you'll be seeing those.
Okay. Just 2 more things before we ask for any public participation. And one is, I just want to remind everybody, because we've had such beautiful weather, but with that has been a drought. And just remind everybody that there is a voluntary water restriction right now. So to limit all non-essential water use and no outdoor automatic sprinklers between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. 7 days a week. And to please restrict outdoor water usage to not more than 2 days per week. We've had beautiful weather, but it comes with a price. And the other thing I just wanted to just mention that we have 2 very, 2 things coming up. One of them is looking at the budget for FY21, and the other one is the articles. And these are going to be 2 somewhat challenging discussions. So I'm just requesting that for the next meeting, given that we're also going to be addressing transfers, that we ask Ed to, that on the agenda, I'm just letting you know that this is what I was thinking, and if you agree, to remove some of the things. I'm assuming that the bid's going to go out for the disability, that the bid's going to go out for the land, that a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about for the last multiple meetings, that we have, just Ed give some quick updates during his TA report if there's anything significant, because those 2 discussions are going to take a fair amount of time. Is that okay with everybody?
That's fine.
That's good.
Okay, so open time for the public. Are there any correspondences that come in, or is there anybody on the Zoom on video that would like to speak?
Nope.
No, you all set, Tammy?
I'm good this time.
Okay.
And I haven't received any correspondence.
Yeah, I haven't seen any. Okay, so if that's it, then we do have 1 executive session. Let me just read. So I need a motion to go into executive session because we're going to discuss Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Number 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiation with non-union personnel, and to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. So a motion to go into executive session?
Move that we go into executive session.
I'll second Francie.
Okay, Francine made the motion and John seconded. All those in favor?
Before you do that, I just want to announce that we're not coming back, or?
I was actually going to do that afterwards, but I'll go ahead and do that now. We're not going to be resuming open session.
Okay. All right, Tishman, aye.
Falls eye.
Roland, aye.
Martin, aye.
Bowden, aye. Okay, so we're going to jump right back in, or are we going to 5 minutes?
Aye.
Yes, 5.
Is that enough for time?
Yep.
And everybody has the link? Okay, see you soon.
Thank you.